Hey everybody, it is GlitterGhosty here, and I am with Video Game Fury for
Hello,
our
hello.
for the kickoff episode of Game-A-Holics. And we have a show of controversy today. I think every topic we have is pinned in a controversial setting. It's nothing that is just kind of black and white.
What? But it's almost Christmas, Gary. How could there be controversy?
Because it's not snow, it's salt. It's the gaming world.
Just rub it in the wounds.
Yep,
Come on, guys.
that's all we do. We don't get nice things, we just get salty things.
No, not even coal.
Yep, it's too good for us. We want to preserve our pain. It's what gamers do.
Exactly.
But so the topic we're gonna before we jump into topics, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of give a bit about yourself so people know what brings the fury to the video games.
Oh man, just like you just opened up with there, there's always a lot of fury to share with the internets. But yeah, no, for me, I mean, I'm Video Game Fury, as Gary introduced me earlier. You can also call me Tim if you want to be pals. Please be pals with me. um, so yes, please love me. Yeah, I've been I've been in the internet in some form or capacity for a while. I mean, back in like 2009, a buddy of mine did a comic book Fury back in the day. The Fury brand just transferred over to video games over the years, but it was like a vlog podcast talking about the news, what stuff we were reading. We get to interview some of the creators. It was a fun time for a while, but you know, being not a big part of the comic book industry and being a full time job and everything, it was just too difficult to sustain after a while. So we closed shop a few, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago on that. And then from there, just kind of like after a while, just kind of exploring more of my passion on the side of like what are some of the other interests I have, comics, video games. Where can I turn that into something that I'd love to talk about and voice about on the web here? And I've always also had a very big interest in the game dev world too, learning how to make games. I dabbled a little bit into it after getting out of college a few years back, but there's only so much time I could spend money and study. I need to go actually do real work and provide for myself if I want to eat tuna and rice for the rest of my life.
First of
um,
adulthood.
exactly. Now I've upgraded to salmon. Go figure. Anyway. um, but no, I mean, after a while, I mean, as the game dev tools started getting more streamlined and easier to use, I put myself back in there. I went through a group called Playcrafting, which is based headquartered here in New York. Took a couple classes in Unity, helped did like little game jams here and there, and then I basically started learning the Unity engine. And nothing, I've slowed down a bit since there because my full time work's gotten crazy. But I've dabbled integrating like 2D space shooters, like a 3D platformer. Did a little global game jam earlier in the year, doing something with like music and I don't even know how to describe it really there. But we'll save that for another time. Yeah, I mean, but after a while, I kind of got to thought to myself because I mean, I enjoyed podcasting. I love listening to podcasts, so I figured this. I don't hear a lot of people or podcasts. I mean, I know a couple that I listen to myself, but you don't really hear a lot of podcasts talking about not just like the video game stuff, the news, and what they play, but you don't really hear much about people documenting their journey studying game dev. And I think in
Mhm.
this age where the game industry, we see a lot of games, we play a lot of games, we love them, but the video game industry is pretty small and tight knit when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of indie stuff, indie studios as well there, but these are very small studios. So I think the industry itself is pretty small scale here. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to just really go through what it takes to be a game developer, even if it's just a side hustle. So I basically came up with, since I love the name Comic Book Fury so much, I thought about, hey, why not just do Video Game Fury? Make it so much about what are the things that I'm passionate about in the industry, what are some things I'm angry about that I think could be better about it. Um, but also just from a game dev perspective, a lot of the trials and tribulations, I'm sure people who are aspiring to be a game dev probably want to know what that process actually looks like, especially if they're coming out of college and don't think they have the money or time to really put into understanding or learning it. I figured this is an opportunity for me to kind of share some of those pros and cons as I go through the experience myself. So that's kind of what my podcast is doing right now. It's on the Anchor app. It's on all the different podcast apps out there: iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and so on. If you guys want to check that out. And
We
under
will
that,
link
I'm
it
doing a
down
little
below in the
Twitch.
description for you as well.
Thank you, sir. Yep. And other than a little Twitch streaming every now and then, under my same moniker, that's kind of my gist right now. Again, just side hustle for now. I work full time in the ad tech industry, so it's not anything full time I'm doing, and probably not anytime soon. But I'm enjoying it. It's a great outlet to share passion, not just for the games itself, but for the actual business and development of the industry. It's just something I really enjoy doing.
Awesome. So that is him. And as for myself, grew up gaming, and I'm now side hustling in the streaming and gaming world myself. Starting with the Game-A-Holics show here on this channel. There's going to be another show that doesn't have a name yet that is hopefully launching in the new year as well. That will be based around gaming. And there's also going to be a blog that is launching called Stay Positive Gaming. That's going to cover just how to deal with people tilting on your teams when you're playing competitively, tips and tricks I've learned over the years for interacting with people in games to kind of keep the peace and get the team working together versus everybody just yelling at each other and the frustration all that caused. Kind of a self-help motivational kind of thing for gamers to kind of help you stay positive and keep your team positive, and just looking to build a community of people that just want to have fun and go on adventures in video games again, instead of all the, well, you can't make that 360 no-show shot, you suck, that you get so much now in the gaming when these little 12-year-olds start cursing at you. That's what I've been up to, is looking at how to build that, and my name is not nearly as brand driven as his is. It started out as in the old days of Halo 2, I want to say. Was in a clan with a girl from college that I dragged along with, and the clan name was Glitter, and I was Ghosty. And back in the day, you just shoved everything together because that's how your name came to be when you put yourself on any platforms. And when I joined Twitch, that's just the way it kind of went. And when I decided to start streaming, I was like, well, all my friends already know this name, so might as well just keep it. So I have been building a brand around it since then, and having fun with it, and just looking to connect with other gamers of like mind and explore some games and stuff online. And I always love talking about it, and I knew Tim loved talking about it, so I figured we could hook up and talk about our addiction together here on Game-A-Holics, and have some fun with it.
You've been holding out on me, man. Here, you've been GlitterGhosty all this time, even when you and I were haloing it up.
I was, but I kept that one. That was the competitive secret side one. That didn't come home from college with me.
And you think you know a person all these years.
And then
all the times you shotgun me in the back, and I didn't know it was a glitter ghost behind me.
Yep, it's just, you weren't ready for the sparkle.
I don't think I'll ever will be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So the first topic here that we're going to talk about is E3, and more specifically the fact that Sony kind of told E3 to shove it and not showing up this year, which is pretty shocking, considering that Sony would, I would say, be the cornerstone of E3 the past few years, as far as the big one to go see.
I mean, they've been there since the beginning.
Yeah.
E3 started in 1995. This would have been their 25th year attending E3, and they just decided to drop out at that anniversary. That's pretty wild.
That is crazy, yeah. Because you figure, I mean, you have Nintendo, you have Xbox there and stuff like that, but really, Sony has always kind of stolen the show. I mean, there's been very few years I can think of where the big news coming out wasn't something Sony or PlayStation related.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue too. I mean, if they stole the show, it's probably sometimes for the wrong reasons.
That's true too.
It wasn't 2006. 2006, the debut of PS3 was not their most shining moment.
This is true, but
yeah.
But it'll be interesting. Do you think the big thing I've been seeing and doing the kind of some research around this when we started talking about it was a lot of people are thinking it's kind of their way of kind of cutting the momentum off from Microsoft and Nintendo, who have bigger things to announce at E3, and kind of doing their own thing around that same time to kind of steal some of the thunder, leading into the PS5, which people are saying is coming 2020.
Yeah, I guess so. The thing that bothers me about that move, so I have two minds on it here. I would say one, obviously, I mean, there's obviously some publishers and companies out there doing their own thing out there. Like EA was of an example. They decided to cut out of E3. They still show up on E3 weekend with their EA Play events, and they have the
Mm-hmm.
conference on Saturday. But they're technically just kind of doing their own thing as it is.
Yeah,
Nintendo stopped doing conferences a while ago, just doing their Nintendo Direct, excuse me. But they
yeah,
still have a presence at the show with their Treehouse Live and their show floor.
yeah,
Um, it's just a very bold and questionable move on Sony's part, in my mind here, because I mean we're in 2018 now. We're in a digital streaming world,
yeah.
pretty much, and now E3 is open to the public, so you've got both press and fans showing up to this event here, and you would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, especially with all the influencers coming from YouTube and Twitch are there
Yeah,
as well, all doing their thing, bringing their selfie sticks, bringing their cameras and their phones. They're streaming this stuff all
yeah,
over. It's not conventional news outlets or the major, media brands like IGN or GameSpot, for example, that are broadcasting and covering the shows. It's
right.
everyone doing it.
Yeah.
I'd say we have more eyeballs today on this show than ever before in its
Mm-hmm.
20+ year history. Um, and really, E3 is. I mean, yeah, there's the little events that happen. Like Sony could announce a show, like maybe in the winter, or Microsoft will. They had that XO18 show
Right.
last month. That was like kind of like a fan fest. They'll
Mm-hmm.
do their little things every now and then. But I always look at E3 as like this is the major. This is the one week out of the entire year where the whole world is focused on the video game industry, and
Yeah.
you have every eyeball looking at everybody here to get it. And I would think that for someone like Sony, who again, as I said earlier, has been at this show since the very beginning, I would like to think that this continues to be the opportunity to get those eyeballs going. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wonder if this is like an arrogance thing on their part there, that this is going to be a repeat of their PS3 debut debacle, where they were so high on the success of the PS2 that when they got to the PS3, they just totally lost that momentum, and it only
Yeah.
took PS4 launching for them to get that back. So I don't know if it's an arrogance thing that they're doing this year. I mean, I know you mentioned PS5 is on their dockets, and obviously, everyone's saying 2020 is when the new generation of consoles is going to come in. But I kind of look at it as like, what is there for Sony to really talk about next year? I mean,
That's true
think about
too.
think about E3 this year. They said they were going to focus on 4 games. They were focusing on Last of Us 2, Tsushima, Death Stranding, and Spider-Man. Spider-Man is already out.
Right.
So there's 3 games, 3 major games there, first-party exclusives of theirs that they have going. The rumor that I heard is that Death Stranding, the Hideo Kojima game that's coming, is supposedly going to come out in June of next year, which is actually pretty bold for a Kojima game if you know how long it takes him to make a game.
Yeah.
But I think now that he's no longer at Konami and he's now under Sony's purse strings, I'm sure Sony's probably ringing him along and saying, "Hey, we need to get this game going soon. Let's go, let's go, let's
Yeah.
go." So I would not be surprised if Death Stranding, even though it's Kojima behind it, it could potentially make 2019. Last of Us 2, I don't know where that fits next year because there's already another zombie game coming out called Days
Yeah.
Gone that's coming out from Sony. You can also say Dying Light 2, which is for Xbox and PC. There's another
Mm-hmm.
zombie game that's coming. I don't know if Sony is going to want to squeeze that much zombie content into the year when the zombie well is already drying up as it is. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that game is going to make 2019, but if they
I
want to fill
wouldn't
out that kind of, go ahead.
I wouldn't be surprised if they held that over for the 5 as one of the launch titles and get the
Maybe.
hype behind it and kind of push the development back and kind of update the graphics or whatever is going to be on the new 5 one and make that one of the launch titles of and do like the dual boot like they do at times, like here's your PS4 or you can get it with your PS5 and give you
Exactly.
some momentum at that Christmas time of you can buy it for either or system kind of deal
Exactly.
in 2020.
It's the same thing they did with the first Last of Us. They came out. The first one I think was 2013, I think, which was right on the tail end of PS3's life cycle, and then the remastered version
Right.
came out to PS4 like a year later. So
Yeah.
it makes total sense to me that they would do that. And then of
Yeah.
course you got Ghost of Tsushima, which we only just saw gameplay footage of this last year.
Yeah.
I think that's a PS5 launch title. The game looks incredibly gorgeous, which is why I really think more it's going to come out on the PS5. I just don't think it has that graphical potential the last of the PS4.
Hmm.
So now you know that.
Yeah.
What else? What does Sony have to show at 2019 E3? You
Yeah, because
know?
I mean, everything else is probably just going to be joint titles that everybody else is going to be hyping too. And that,
Right.
because I mean, like anything new that comes out from like the Assassin's Creed or anything like that's going to sell itself. It's not going to need the Sony machine behind it to really push it.
Yeah, and then like I said, Days Gone is coming out in April. That
Yeah.
there's that Dreams game from the guys who make Little Big Planet is
Right.
rumored to be coming out next year too. I mean, it's pretty ripe if Sony releases next year. I don't think the problem is the content for them. Is just more about what's coming after. And I
Yeah.
don't think they're ready to do that just yet, especially when you consider like their other studios like Guerrilla Studios already had a Horizon Zero Dawn
Hmm.
like a year and a half ago. Maybe they'll have a teaser trailer ready by sometime, but there's not going to be anything showing for that anytime soon. And I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
if there is a sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. It's probably also a PS5 title as well. So
Yeah,
so
because I
yeah, you
mean,
could
because
go ahead.
2019 will be the wind down for the PS4. Then, if it is actually 2020 that the new console's coming, so I mean, they could just be using this as controversy to lead into the 2020 E3 when they might announce the game or some the platform or something, and just
Right.
kind of use it as a hey, they weren't here last year, will Sony be here this year, and then root back in or something like that with a big announcement then in
Yeah.
2020 with a whole big thing to show off.
Yeah, and that's why I think like okay, they probably don't have anything to show. Then most likely they'll probably put out some. They'll probably do their own show maybe like later that in 2019,
Hmm.
when kind of the dust is settled on all their other first party releases, and then 2020 they may
Yeah.
come back and really start pushing the PS5 because obviously I think most systems tend to release in that fall holiday timeframe for
Yeah.
for buying gifts and all that, like a lot of
Yeah.
the games do. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do that, introduce more things about PS5 and E3 2020, and then they release the system later that year. My mind, that seems to make more sense from a marketing perspective as to what Sony is planning to do here.
Yeah.
Um, but
And it steals
that'll
all the thunder then in 2020 from Microsoft and Nintendo on how do you compete with the new Sony system, where this year they're kind of conceding it to them, going like, okay, you guys can have a spotlight here, kind of, if you want it. And then in 2020, they're going to have to bring something big if they want to get any attention if Sony's coming back in with a PS5.
true, but the other thing too is that what is Sony's loss is also Microsoft's gain
Right.
because they pretty much are going to be the sole console manufacturer hogging all of E3. I mean,
Yeah.
put aside all the other publishers doing shows like Bethesda, I'm sure will come back, and Ubisoft, but
Yeah.
this is all Microsoft's the game this year. And they already made the announcement at their E3 this year that they were working on a next generation console. And there's
Hmm.
the rumors that there's going to be two different SKUs. One's going to be disc, and one's going to not be a discless. So it's going to be more of a streaming console.
Hmm.
So that is a big opportunity for Microsoft to go all out on top of all the stuff with Game Pass,
Hmm.
keyboard and mouse support. They bought all these new studios, including like Obsidian being the recent
They've
example that's getting a
also
lot of hype.
redone Mixer to try to steal Twitch creators as well. They just lowered their partner requirements. Like there's no
Right.
longer a viewership requirement. You just have to have I think it's 2,000 followers and then have been on the platform for like 2 months. And you can get partner status with them if they feel like you'd be a good representative of the Microsoft brand. And then they also don't have a no compete clause in it, so you can still go and stream other places if you want. Because like Twitch, once you become a Twitch partner, you can't go and stream anywhere else. You're locked into Twitch because they don't want to share their creators. Mixer saying you'll be a partner with us, but you can go back on Twitch and do the affiliate level stuff if you want to make money there too. We don't care, as long as your main platform is basically Mixer at that point, since that's where you're repping Microsoft and they're giving you all the benefits. So I mean, they've been making moves to really kind of solidify their own little gaming hub, both on the entertainment side of it as well as the console side of it. So they have a lot that they could bring to the plate if they play their cards right.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is like putting themselves back into favor of being the friends of the
Hmm.
fans, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Whether it's with Mixer, whether it's with Game Pass, the
Hmm.
keyboard mouse support. I mean, and having all these studios under their belt. I
And they're
mean,
being much
they.
more friendly to the cross-platform movement than Sony is.
Mhm. Yep, yep. So I mean, it's the swinging of the pedestal. I mean, it's or the
Yeah.
pendulum, I should say. I mean, it's like it was like that last generation. 360 was on top of the world, and then
PS4 came through
when
and
they
kind
switched
of.
to Xbox came through, and the Xbox One's launch because the Xbox One was all about being an all-in-one entertainment system as opposed to being just a game system, and PS4
Yeah.
took advantage of that. And now we're swinging that pendulum back in the other way.
Yeah.
so I feel like that's kind of where Sony is right now. I think they I mean they've done great. I mean everything they
Yeah.
put out, you can always guarantee you're going to get a great experience. God of War is a great
Hmm.
example this year. Spider-Man is going to be next to my GameCube once I get through Tomb Raider. But you know, you can only put out so much content when you can. When the games take about 4 or 5 years to make nowadays per studio,
Yeah.
and I just feel like I look at 2019, I'm like there's really nothing else to show, and they would only tick off the fans more if they continue to show more trailers of the same games each time. I
Right.
just I just don't think they really can do anything more for E3. Um, I mean, having said that, I mean that's
They could whip
but that having
out. They could bring out the PSP Vista 2.0.
oh, oh Lord, and you just said Vista too, so that's even worse to say. I think you meant Vita, but
Vita, Vista, whatever it was called. I never had one.
yeah, Vista would never appeal to anybody either. Like if you really want to piss off your fans, but sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a weird. It's still. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's the reason I think is it's just that there as well. I mean, they could still technically they still could pull a Nintendo just and not even they don't even have to do a conference, but just like show floor at least.
Yeah.
Have an opportunity to whatever's coming out in that back half of 2019 have a booth for that. But they're not
Right.
even doing that, which is
Yeah.
another that's the other strange thing about it. But I think just Sony is just taking things back and really rethinking the strategy of what they're going to do with PS5 at this point,
Hmm.
and just feel because they're not ready for that. They're not ready to show anything else gaming wise. I think they just pretty much put their hands up and set them out
Well, I think
and
that
left it at
probably
that.
also just with how much backlash there's been against gaming lately by the fans when publishers have handled things wrong at conventions
Mm.
between Fallout 76, between Diablo Immortal, Star Wars Battlefronts 2, all of these things that have sunk or nearly sunk major franchises at times or caused a huge backlash. I think it's also probably a smart move that if they don't have something concrete, don't go in there with something that your fans are going to assume you're going to get and then not give it to them. Because that will probably hurt you more in the long run than just not being there. And I think with Microsoft kind of getting their gaming division back on track, it also leaves them with the question of how are we going to market against Microsoft come PS5? Because I mean, Microsoft basically did it for them last time. But if Microsoft's actually going back to making a pure gaming console again, it's going to be the first time in a while that PlayStation's really had a competitor that was on the same footing for what they were offering again. Because the last time that happened the same footing, they kind of got washed. When the PS3
Mm.
went against the 360, it didn't go well for Sony, who assumed they were the big kid on the block. They kind of got the wash there, and I think they definitely want to avoid that happening again with the PS5 and whatever Xbox is bringing out in 2020 to compete with it. Is you don't want to let too much stuff slide early because you don't want Microsoft taking advantage of that, but you also don't want to present something that's not finished yet and have the fans cry because that wasn't what they wanted.
Right.
And so definitely think looking at it in detail, Sony's in kind of a rough spot between what they have to offer and what they could offer. And then would that be enough to appease the fans who paid all that money to go to E3 for Sony if they weren't going to get something awesome out of it?
Right. Yeah. I mean, And with the event becoming more of a fan experience now, since E3 opened their doors a couple of years
Hmm.
ago to them, um, I mean, I'm sure there's still some things to play, but I mean, like a lot of people love that Sony booth and love seeing the first party content there, for what I hear. And
Yeah,
what's the justification now, especially if you're coming from overseas? I mean, I feel
right.
really bad for a lot of those people who are putting in the money when events like this get gouged like crazy from like
Yeah.
a flight or a hotel or a food perspective.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna suck for them that they have to to put all that efforts that that all of a sudden they're not gonna have their best folks like Sony being there.
Yeah. No, it will definitely be interesting. And I mean, and on the console side, it's very party lined at times too. Like not everybody plays both sides. So you do have a lot of people that are Sony only or are Xbox only. So not having one there could also hurt E3 as a whole of people either not buying tickets, trying to refund their tickets, things like that. Because if you only play Sony and Sony's not going to be there, is there enough other third party publishers to justify all that price and cost for you?
Right. I also heard a rumor. I was watching another podcast when this news broke out a few weeks ago that I mean E3 is put on by the ESA, the Electronic Software
Mm,
Association. E3, from what I've heard, was they're a nonprofit. They get pretty much most of their money, the ESA, from E3 itself.
yeah,
Nothing else happens during the year where they get back this money. It all comes through
right,
E3 and the sponsors and the guys like the Sonys and Microsofts who come in and
right.
show. And I've also heard too that getting a spot on the floor is very very expensive.
Oh, I bet.
It would not surprise me, especially if it's the LA Coliseum. I think it is. I would not be surprised, or convention center. Sorry.
Hmm.
Um, would not surprise me if Sony just looked at it and said, "Well, why do this when I could just go to my own? I could go to the PlayStation Theater here in New York, which they
Yeah,
did. That's where they announced the PS4. I could just do that same thing for PS5 and not pay. I'd probably pay like half the price
yeah,
for posting and flying and getting everybody in from the press there. It wouldn't be surprised if it was a mix of that too.
yeah,
With Sony saying, "Well, why are we going through all this efforts with no big returns?"
yeah. No, that could be too. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out and how some of the fans react when it gets a bit closer to it. If there is if we notice a big dip in either support for Sony or even just the way the media covers it, like if you start seeing a lot more coverage swinging to Microsoft, or if it's just kind of a everybody's talking about Sony because they're the ones missing,
Mm-hmm.
if that's what's
Yeah,
grabbing the headlines. So that would be interesting.
yeah. Well, I mean, my backlog is almost 2 years old at this point, so I'll still the Sony content will be still fresh in my mind as
Yeah.
opposed to everyone else who's in the press and plays these games right away. Who are going to be like, "Where's my Sony content? Where's my Sony
Hmm.
advertising?" I'll be like, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm enjoying the hell out of Spider-Man, even though it's mid 2019." So,
Yeah. Only got two guys catching up.
exactly.
Yeah, so that I think that pretty much covers the E3 thing. I mean, it's definitely something we're going to keep our eye on, and when it gets closer, I think we'll probably revisit that here and just kind of see how any of our predictions played out, if we were completely wrong, or if we look like we can tell the future and understood what was happening.
We're only going to make lots of money predicting the future.
We could, but we have to be right for it to actually be profitable, which is the hard part.
Yeah, I'm not banking on that one.
Probably for the smart, probably the smartest move. But
Indeed.
and so the next topic, then we'll kind of segue out of there, is one that affects pretty much all platforms now, and PC, console, handheld, mobile, anywhere that you have a digital device with gaming, you now have loot boxes
Ooh.
and all the RNG goodness that comes with them of clicking a button and hoping something good pops out for you. Where you're either paying to win or you're just paying for cosmetics, but it's quite the controversy from just the fans not liking it because you can't pick what you're buying, all the way up to there's some countries now saying that this is causing kids to get addicted to gambling and make not poor life choices when they get older and get presented with the option to do some real gambling. They're linking that back to loot boxes now as well. To just the some countries have made them illegal, and they've had to be pulled from games because they feel that it's not a good influence on the youth of their country. I mean, I think it's all a bit crazy. I don't like them, but I also don't ever pay for them, so I only use the free ones I can win in games. So I never saw the big outcry, but apparently it's becoming quite a large problem for people.
Yeah, and I'd say probably for guys like you and me, I mean that are are older or have families or full time jobs, like we're and probably have a good sense of I don't know if decency is the right word, but it's common sense, I guess, to say to understand. Hey, maybe I shouldn't spend $500 on Smurf berries in the Smurf game to grow my strawberry farm. I'm just
Maybe
saying that because
not.
my niece was into that when she was like 6 years old, and her mom got a bill saying, "Why am I paying this much for Smurf berries?" But I digress. um, but the point I'm trying to make is that, and it's interesting enough mentioning that there's an article I pulled from VG247
Mhm.
talking about studies done, and really this is more done in the UK about how it affects children with gambling. They said that the study they did was like found 39% of the children in UK age 11 to 16 regularly gamble, whether they're using their parents' own online account or they're doing it privately with friends. And they did this over with about close to 3,000 11 to 16-year-olds over the course of the year. That's pretty staggering, if you
It
ask me.
is.
I mean, 39% may not sound like much because it's not over 50, but even 39% is to like be something to be concerned about.
Mhm.
And then the overall consensus around the world is that we have at least 1 million children that are being exposed to this in some way as like a gateway drug that could potentially lead to gambling issues down the road. It's the whole dopamine effects that they talk
Mhm.
about, that the thrill of like you said, the RNG, randomly throwing the dice and seeing what you get out of it, whether cosmetic or not. The fact
Yeah.
remains is it creates the dopamine effect of that addiction that could potentially lead to these kids as they grow up to maybe go down into Vegas and have these potential gambling problems. Who knows? Um, yeah, but I mean, like you said, I mean, for a guy like me, I mean, I play Fortnite, I play
Mhm.
Overwatch, and obviously a lot of that stuff there is cosmetic in terms of the loot boxes there,
Yeah.
or the microtransactions, if you will. I mean, at the end of the day, I've never been too I've never been too in depth into that stuff there too. I mean, the grind is. I know enough to play a game. If it's too grindy, it's not for me. Like I don't want to have to keep doing the same mission 10 times in a row just to get a rare item.
Mhm.
I feel like there are certain games that can do that pretty well. Warframe comes to mind. That is pretty good about keeping the gameplay fresh, such that when you do the play same missions, it still doesn't feel like the same boring thing.
Mhm.
Fortnite's obviously good with that, even though they've revamping the map every few weeks. So I never feel the compelling and having the wherewithal to look at those games and say, you know what, I don't need to go to loot boxes. I'm happily able to just jump in,
Mhm.
play a game for 20 minutes with friends, and get out. And as simple as that.
Yeah.
But again, the problem, as I mentioned, is the folks who are much younger than us that they can't make that kind of decision making yet because they're not old enough to understand it.
Mhm. See, I come from grindy games like World of Warcraft. That is pure grind for the most part. But I always liked the grind though. Like I never liked the grind. It's the grind. But in Warcraft, like in old Warcraft, when I was still playing it back in the day, it was you did the grind because when you got that cosmetic item, you also got upgrades and all that to your gear and stuff like that. But when you got the best one, not everybody had it. So it was something special. So it made the grind worth it because you might be, say, the only person on your whole server that has it. Or there might be only your guild that has that item because you were the only ones that could push through that content quickly, and then nobody else is really going to have it till like the tail end when they completely overpower that content themselves. So it became like a status symbol to do that grind and get that cosmetic piece or that upgrade piece to show off. Like when you walk through Stormwind or Orgrimmar, people went, "Wow, he beat that. That's awesome! Like that's what I wanted." So to me, the grind at that point made sense because I'm going to invest all this time and it's going to be horrible and I'm going to hate every second of it. But there's this payoff at the end that only I can have. And that can be my little special piece for as long as it's special until other people can catch up to me. But it had a tangible result. What annoys me the most about like the pay to wins and the loot boxes and stuff like that is it takes that specialness away from those kinds of items. Like you don't have to earn the special appearance. You don't have to earn the glowing wings. You don't have to earn the shotgun that turns into a flamethrower and shoots cannonballs from space. Like you don't have to earn any of that stuff anymore. You just get it by chance. So I mean, if you have the choice of like in Star Wars, the second Battlefront game where it was like play for like 70 hours or paid $20 and have a chance to get it, the $20 becomes pretty appealing, I would assume, because it doesn't matter if you work harder or not, you're going to get the same thing as the person that threw the money at it anyway. And I think that's a problem with gaming as a whole that goes beyond just the loot boxes, is taking away that specialness of that one person or those few people that could get there. I think drives people to just spend more money on stuff like this because, well, what difference does it make? I could work and play your game for hours on end, or I could throw $40 at it and get the cool thing I want now. Or throw $200 and get it. But weighing your life is $200 worth 80 hours or 100 hours of gameplay time to you to get the same thing, as far as what you're going to be doing with your time then. And I feel like a lot of that stems from the fact that games no longer make you work as hard for results at times. So when you're presented with the path of you can work really, really hard and devote your entire life to getting that one thing that some 12-year-old borrowed their mom's credit for and got in 4 loot boxes, it takes that specialness of those items away. And I think that to me is where it really hurts the gaming. And I mean, it definitely hurts the people's lives if they learn the gambling from doing this. But I think loot boxes as themselves are a problem for gaming in that A, it's getting bad publicity that youths are starting to gamble and spend their parents' money and fall into these addictions, which is never a good thing. Then it's also promoting just kids taking their mom's credit cards or having access to their Google Play accounts like your niece and just running up this huge bill, which then turns back to gaming is bad because it cost me $400, so I don't want my kid gaming. And then it's taking a lot of the challenge away, I think, for what used to be a reward is now just a throwaway item. Right. And I think a lot of that stems from this microtransaction loot box culture is if somebody's going to pay real money, then they deserve the special item. Whereas if somebody's going to grind, they deserve the special item, but is it still special though if somebody else just paid for it?
It's with a great heart when we just had the Game Awards recently to look at those top 6 year here. Pretty much almost all single player games: God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Spider-Man, Celeste, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I mean, when I was reading some of the comments of the YouTube videos that Game Awards started posting there, it was just everyone was just kind of cheering like we did it. We're looking at all these games. Hey, they're not EA games. EA should learn from this. All single player, single player story driven games are getting the appeal that everyone's looking for here. And yeah, you know what? They're probably not making billions of dollars like EA's making off FIFA with the Ultimate Teams concept, or whatever loot box concept they're introducing into games, like they tried to do with Battlefront 2, as you alluded to earlier. It just becomes a question of when is enough for a company. And it's hard for me because at the end of the day, I always have to remember I love these people's games, but they are businesses. They are thinking about that bottom line at the end of the day and trying to maximize the value out of their IP as much as they can. In one respect, I can't blame them for that because they want to sustain themselves so that they can potentially keep putting out more content. It's when that content continues to be in that same vein of the loot box or the microtransaction, and you're including that in almost every concept of the game here. I mean, I kind of worry about that with EA because their next big game is from BioWare, which Anthem is coming out in February.
Yeah.
I worry about them introducing because the game, looking at the game just from the videos, screams Destiny to me, and
Hmm.
Destiny is also all about having a the loot box and the chance as well, or
Yeah.
the microtransactions, I should say. So I worry about that a lot, especially from a studio that I revere so much, like BioWare.
Hmm.
Um, to come to understand here. But I think at the end of the day, these companies are going to have to see, because of the backlash that has been coming, or countries like Belgium are looking at saying, "Oh, these loot boxes are gambling," because of the Battlefront 2 controversy,
Yep.
and then every other game that's come out since I used it. They're going to have to realize very soon that the insane amount of money they may be making is going to come probably crashing down hard on
Hmm.
them in the years to come if legislature across the world gets their way.
Well, it's also hurting them in the promotional aspect as well, not just from the bad publicity from like the countries and stuff like that. Is like Heroes of the Storm recently ran over the right before Christmas. It was like the end of November, early December promotion they ran was if you streamed Heroes of the Storm on Twitch, all your viewers were entered in for a chance to win loot boxes. If they watched for a certain amount of hours, they got different rewards and things like that that were not randomly generated. It was just time caps that if you watch for like 4 hours, you got these emotes, 6 hours, you got this portrait, 10 hours, you got this animated emotes, stuff like that. But then you'd also get random loot boxes throughout the day as well. And one of my friends who streams, she's was in a country that you can't have loot boxes. So she plays here this time, so she's going to play it anyway. But there was no incentive for her to really promote it because you're getting free stuff she can't have now, and she's the one promoting your game. So if your promotions are, if you're expecting these content creators and stuff to like promote your game for you and help you drive interest, and your reward for that interest is something that content creator can't even have, that's your free publicity starting to go, well, do I really want to do your free publicity if I'm not getting anything out of it?
Right.
And weighing out that way is if I can't get the reward as well, what's the fun in it for me playing the game? I mean, the game's fun, but if you can't get the reward your viewers are getting that they're going to be showing off and stuff in the game, what's the incentive for you to really be motivated to do it? So I mean, that's another avenue that I think these companies need to think about is you get a lot of free promotion now between Mixer, Twitch, YouTube Gaming, and there's a couple other smaller streaming platforms I've seen starting to crop up. Is that if you're building something that not every creator can take advantage of, is that going to hurt your free publicity and possibly even end up being more of a backlash of creators bad mouthing your game because you're offering things that they can't have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I wonder if because this is such a new thing. I mean, I don't think these PR teams are equipped to handle all this. I think that they just look at it as like, hey, there's an incentive to play the game here, but they're not looking at it from psychological perspective. Because I mean, hey, gaming. I mean, it's an adult's thing right now. I think they say the
Mm-hmm.
average age of the gamer is like 34, 35 years old now, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of kids playing Fortnite. I
Yep.
was shocked to hear from my niece one time that big Fortnite fan of a classmate she has was spending hundreds of dollars on cosmetics and battle passes
Well,
on there.
Fortnite has taken over a lot, especially with the younger generation, partially because it looks like it's visually appealing to younger kids for sure, compared to like PUBG and stuff like that, which goes for that more gritty, realistic look. So it definitely gives you that more kid friendly aesthetic. But then it's also look how expensive video games are now. If I went to my mom when I was 13 and said, "Mom, can I play this game? It's free," or "Mom, can I buy this game? It's $60." Mom's gonna be like, "Go play the free one. Have fun with that,"
Right.
because it's
But
just
then if they're not informed enough on what's going on in the game,
right.
that's the problem.
Yeah, no, that's definitely when the parental education becomes an issue. But I think that's also a big incentive, though, for parents to allow their kids to get the gateway for some of these ones that especially are the free to plays and stuff like that because it's so expensive to be a gamer now. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you figure when we were younger, games were not that expensive. Like you could get $10 and go to GameStop and get like 4 or 5 games for that were pre-used. Now, if you get $10, you can't even get. You might be able to get like Barbie's Dream House for your PS4, and that's about it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, who wouldn't want
Mhm.
that in the
Yeah,
collection to brag to
but I mean, but
friends?
that's the price now is all those Crashware titles that they just toss out there to make a buck off of, or what take up like that lower end bracket is. There's nothing good down there anymore. So your choice
Right.
is spend like $40+ or play something like Fortnite that's free.
Yeah, and you make a good point about the expensive games here. I mean, we also think about this too here. We've been at $60 for a while for premium
Mm-hmm.
games. Every generation from like the old days to like PS1, PS2 start would go up like $10 each time.
Yeah.
And then when we got to three, it went to 60. I don't know if people know this, but when we jumped to PS4 and Xbox One, games are still $60.
Yeah.
And we have not risen the prices of these games with the kind of graphical fidelity that we're getting around nowadays here. So a lot of these publishers saying, well, we got to justify these costs here because we're spending a lot more time making these games here and not putting enough content as it is. So
Mm-hmm.
let's expand it. Let's make it games of a service. Let's get some trading packs in here on FIFA, and now we'll have them trade each other and create their ultimate FIFA dream team. Or
Yeah.
hey, you know what? You can go Battlefront 2. Just don't worry about it. 40. You don't have to do the 40 hours. Go spend this money. You'll get Luke Skywalker in no time.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of incentive for them in their mind to think, hey, we need to get the best bang for our buck because gaming is getting more expensive to make nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
but it's coming at the long term cost of these kids, especially when, like you said, when they're playing a game like Fortnite, they're not going to know any better because they think the game looks cool, and the parents going in saying it's free, it looks cool, but they're not doing the research to look into. Oh wait, there's other things you could buy here too beneath the surface that
Right.
my kid may have access to. I need to really be careful about that. But a lot of parents that I'm seeing are not really putting in that effort and research, and I think I they think they should do the effort. That's one thing here, but also these companies need to be doing the education for this. We're just not doing it at all.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is just you can't raise the prices any higher, so that's not an option for them. Because you mean if you figure if a PS4 game, say if they upped it, say they upped it between the three and the four, so we'd be at 70 now, and then between the four and the five, you'd be up to like 80, 90 then, depending on how they did the prices. Well, at that point, you're basically paying for half a Switch for a disc.
Right.
So you can't really justify as going over 60 because at that point, you're basically, if you buy 2 games, you bought an entire console.
And don't forget too, I mean, we're getting into these next generations of consoles, the rumors of streaming consoles are becoming like more prominent
Mm-hmm.
in the conversations here. So there's not even going to be a need for doing disc anymore. They could cut out the middleman, which is
Yeah.
basically GameStop at this point, and bring those prices down here. I mean, it's why we have, as like I mentioned earlier, it's why we have Microsoft's Game Pass, where I can
Yeah.
get this new first party game day and date for $10 a month because of
Yeah.
the new subscription model that everyone's adopting from Netflix. So yeah, I mean, they're not. I can't see them raising the prices either because the models are changing as far as how they're charging and where consoles are going, which
Yeah.
still creates the problem. Companies still going to think about the loot box
Yeah.
to sets the changes being made in the brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's definitely the easiest solution because getting a subscription based model is going to then highly limit the amount of games people buy. Is if you follow like the Warcraft model where you're spending 30 to $60 for the new expansion, but then you're also paying $15 a month on top of that. Well, you can't afford to have more than one, two, maybe three max, $15 a month going. You can't even really go a subscription based pay model to keep it sustained because that would then get too expensive to do, paying $90 a month or so just to keep your games active.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, it's the there's no easy way out that I can see that for the gaming companies because I mean you have to do something, but at the same time, um, what that is it's a whole lot harder to guess and figure out. I mean, the best solution that I can kind of think of, and the one that I like the most, is just instead of putting it behind an RNG, just put everything in a store and just let people pick what they want and piecemeal it themselves. But so that way you're not spending, say, $200 to get the one thing you want. You're only spending $10. Because like Warcraft doesn't have loot boxes on their store. They just put their mounts, their pets, and their different cosmetic items, and you just go in and buy what you want, and you pay $10 for a pet. I think it's 35 for a mount and like 15 or 20 for a cosmetic piece. And you get exactly what you want, and you just pay for it.
Right.
And you're not playing the random, hopefully I get the right thing, and if I click this button enough times game.
Right. And I should clarify too there. Obviously, I think Fortnite doesn't have loot boxes. It's all
That's right.
But it's the same thing of microtransactions, really. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
You either buy the battle pass and earn your way through it, or you can go to the store and buy those individually. Here, I'll probably say Overwatch is probably more in the vein of loot boxes, is what I'm thinking of the games that are like that I play.
Yeah,
they're still purely cosmetic, but you still could go in and go put that purchase in there and roll the dice and see what happens. But to your point, I think you're saying is that just get the option to just have it out there in the store and customize the character the way you wish.
Yeah.
For as long as you think you can afford it, or ask your parents to see if you can afford it or not.
Yeah. I think that's a much better model, as far as like the long-term effects and stuff from like this research is if you're just giving them the option of, look, you pay $70, you get the 3 things you want, you're done, move on. And then instead of saying, well, you pay $70, you may or may not get what you want, so just keep paying us $70 until you get it. Which is the much more appealing from the business side of it, because I mean, if I can get somebody to pay me 140 over 70, I want the 140, but it also at some point it's going to become that moral justification of how long are people going to let you keep getting away with it, pretty much, until enough is enough.
Yeah, I mean, the way the legislature is going and more people are getting in here, it's probably going to be a quicker conversation than we think from these companies, that they are going to have to rethink a lot of these models in general. I think everyone is on the side that your loot boxes are creating addictions. They're infecting. I wouldn't say they're infecting you, but they're creating the possibility that they will not know right or wrong when they get older and actually take their gambling addictions through a game into other means, digitally or in person somewhere. They're going to want to have to squash that earlier rather than later.
Yeah. And I mean, you also then have the issue too, is the gaming community itself doesn't really like loot boxes. I mean, it's become like a necessary evil to most of the player base. And then you have things like Fallout 76, where Reddit just data mined the potential for loot boxes, or packs or lunch boxes, I forget what they're calling it. They were basically loot boxes. They had a special name for them. Yeah, lunch boxes. But they're built into the be inside that microtransaction type store as a possibility to be added to the game. And I mean, that's a game that's already been plagued with so much controversy that it almost feels like the dumbest thing Bethesda could do is add loot boxes to a game, knowing how unpopular they are to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Fallout 76 is obviously having a lot of controversy outside of this lunchbox stuff, just because of the buggy nature and just terrible gameplay of the game itself. There, it would not surprise me, because it feels like a game that was. I think it was technically made by Bethesda, but I think they outsourced a lot of the networking capabilities of its. It's basically an online survival game. It's not first person, although they said you could play first person, but everyone says it's boring. But it would not surprise me for a game that's probably been really only been worked on the last 2-3 years, because Fallout 4 came out in 2015, I think. That surprised me if they were at the time thinking that this lunchbox concept was going to be great before the whole thing hit the fan with Battlefront 2 and everything, saying that loot boxes were evil. And they just kind of looked and said, okay, it's already tied into the ecosystem. We can't take it out, but we could at least hide it or deactivate it. Where the data miners came in and say, I see what you were trying to do at the time. Yeah. You tried to be sneaky on me. Good on you there or bad on you there. You shouldn't have had it there in the first place. But no,
I definitely don't think they're going to add them at this point, because I don't think they could suffer that backlash on top of the backlash they're already getting. I think they realize that would be dumb to try to milk any more money out of this. Like, they should just be happy if they made any profit at this point with the with the publicity they're getting. And I mean, and I think the other problem, and I think this is a problem that that studio in particular has a lot of issues with anyway. And BioWare suffers from the same thing at times, I think, as well, is they think too big and then they can't deliver. Because I mean, BioWare did it with Star Wars: The Old Republic. The initial game came out online looking just like the fully voiced, beautiful cutscenes, but that wasn't sustainable as an MMO. And now they've had to start scaling all that stuff back because they thought too big. Fallout 76 to me seems to suffer from a similar fate of they wanted this really big sandbox world where there's only like 12,000 people per server. Every action you do affects 11,999 other people, and then things like that. And they wanted this really realistic experience of you are the last 1,200 people that all walked out of these different shelters, and now whatever your world ends up being is by how you all work together, which is a very ambitious concept. And have they ever met the internet? That's a horrible idea.
I know they said they were trying to, balance the server load better by having like maybe only a few hundred people per server on there, but
right, really kind
like
of give it that realistic feeling of being the last of the last. And I mean that's a very ambitious idea, though. I mean, I think it's an awesome idea. Had they pulled it off, that'd be an amazing game where it actually felt like the apocalypse because there's only like 100 of you and you had to world build together and craft things and rely on each other. That sounds awesome to me. But it's very ambitious. And I mean, the only game that I can think of that kind of really makes that work is like EVE Online does a very good job of that very sandbox type atmosphere, but it's not scaled down to such a micro level where one person can dramatically affect the gameplay of everybody else. It's big enough that you can avoid, like, if you realize that one person's fleet's just unstoppable, you just avoid that section of space. It's big enough to avoid that, where they didn't give themselves that out, where if you have one or two people that are trolling the whole server, there is no escape in that game. You just have to start over somewhere else and hope for a better group of people to play with.
Yeah. And I mean, a game like EVE Online has got the care of not just the community, but the who are making sure the content is still up there and relevant enough to create those scenarios too. So I think there's definitely a clear difference on that standpoint.
Yeah.
To Fallout 76, where Bethesda just kind of walked in and said, "You create the experience what you want. There's not going to be any NPCs. Just pick up some logs and go look up some trails and kill these monsters. But otherwise, you're doing you." And I can only take you so far for folks who looked to a game like Fallout and loved the whole narrative experience that 3 and 4 gave them.
It was a big departure for that franchise.
Exactly. Exactly. I feel like this was an experiment, more for them than anything else, and they're proving that they are failing pretty hard on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I was surprised they went this route, given how much trouble they've had with Elder Scrolls Online and making that work as an MMO and kind of going that MMO-like vein with this as well. Because, I mean, they finally, from what I understand, have started to kind of get it right on Elder Scrolls with this Summerfest expansion and a bit in their Morrowind one before it, and corrected a lot of the issues that it had. But that was a huge money loss for them for quite a while before they finally got that turned around to start getting people to be more involved in it and wanting to do the microtransactions and play in that world. Because
sorry, go ahead, finish.
Just because it started out as such a clunky, hard to do thing with nothing to do when you max leveled, and there was just all that issues of a lot of people left there with the, well, do what you want while we're trying to build something else for you. That it felt like kind of a gamble to go with another one of their franchises that same route.
Oh yeah, and hey, I mean, much like they did with Elder Scrolls Online, I'm all for Bethesda. If they are really putting the effort behind supporting this game, please tell me in a year that if you put in the great efforts to address the feedback, address the bugs, and make this a better content-driven game, Fallout 76 may be a better game next year than this year. I mean, we're clearly in an age now where games of a service doesn't mean the game can die on initial launch. I think if you look at Elder Scrolls Online is a good example, but there's Ubisoft games like Ghost Recon Wildlands or Rainbow Six Siege or For Honor had terrible launches, but they're much better games and even better for esports too. From what I hear, they're getting a very great competitive scene in those as well. If they're willing to put in effort and then supports, then I'm all for
Hmm.
seeing this game get better. It's very hard for me to see that now because I don't think of Bethesda as that huge compared to the
Right.
bigger publisher, Ubisoft. And with games that they've already announced coming out, like Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, and you'd
Hmm.
have to imagine a Fallout 5 would be not too far after that. I just don't
Yeah.
envision them putting a lot of stock on what basically was an experiment in my mind.
Hmm. Yeah, I just don't think they have the resources for it to support two big MMOs that way. Because that's a lot of dev work, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of community management. I mean, even Blizzard realized that for a while they were talking about Project Titan, which was supposed to be another MMO that they had, and they're going to have Titan, and they're going to have Warcraft, and they're going to be two MMOs, and even they scrapped it. And I mean, one of the reasons I heard was just they didn't have. There's no way to build a structure internally to support that because of how much work it takes of the devs and the community managers and stuff like that just to maintain the Warcraft community. Because I mean, online player fan bases are very needy people at times. Because the second something stops working, everybody's hitting you up like, "I paid for 24/7 service. Why am I not getting my 24/7 service
Yeah,
out
yeah,
of this game?"
exactly.
And trying to support two things that are supposed to be playable 24/7 like that, pretty much, that's a tremendous task. That I mean, I don't even think like I mean, even like EA level publishers can barely handle one. Because I mean, EA and BioWare are fumbling Star Wars left and right for the past few years, and even Blizzard under Activision is having trouble with Warcraft and maintaining an MO in this day and age because of between the competition and how needy that kind of game just is for the fan base. It's just a lot of work that I don't think their studio is big enough to support two of. And with Elder Scrolls already kind of hitting its stride, I don't think it gives the team that's behind Fallout 76 a chance to ever get to make a stride because they don't have the resources to pull towards that.
Well, man, I mean, if they're all in on creating the UDU experience of Fallout 76, let's just do the physical loot boxes. Let's make it really real
Yes.
and create physical loot boxes, mail them to my door, and I get to pick. I spend $3 and get to pick from them, and maybe I'll get a nice pickaxe or something. I
Be
don't
like the
know.
loot crate,
You
but
know,
for actual nuclear weaponry.
exactly. Yeah. You know, I got a park in my backyard that near me that doesn't get used too much. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So, but I think that pretty much covers loot boxes for us there. I think we've run that one as bad as any every direction we could take it currently. But talking about companies making poor choices,
I can't wait for this one.
oh, that brings us to Blizzard. I mean,
Everyone's favorite company nowadays, right, Gary?
yeah. I mean, I don't think they can make a good choice at this point. I'm starting to wonder. Is it? I mean, from Blizz,
It sounds like you don't believe.
my from
You
BlizzCon,
see me poking a little bit, Gary? Poking.
a little bit. I mean, from BlizzCon to now, I don't think they've come out with a single press release announcement that hasn't been met with outcry. Because I mean, it all started with Diablo Immortal and announcing that at BlizzCon, and we all know the backlash that brought of bringing a mobile game to the stage at a PC conference. And then after teasing Diablo 4 for months before that, only to have like a week, 2 weeks before go, we know we told you Diablo 4, but we're going to give you Candy Crush Diablo instead. And
Hmm.
then from
Now you
there,
have me thinking about Candy Crush Diablo. Thanks.
yeah. Well, because I mean, that's where it all started was the outcry over Diablo, and they assured us at BlizzCon that Diablo Immortal was going to be a full-fledged Diablo experience on mobile. And then right after that, in a press conference post BlizzCon, they're going, well, it's going to be full-fledged Diablo, but for the whole family.
Hmm.
And I don't understand. I mean, that in of itself is a statement that makes no sense to me. Is how do you make Diablo family friendly? Because I don't see how a post-apocalyptic world overrun by demons that you have to slaughter so that you can kill the king of hell is ever a family-friendly moment.
Well, was it family like better in numbers compared to just you? I mean, I think maybe that's what they meant.
Maybe. But so they say that, and then they also told us that they're taking their best devs and moving them to mobile games because they have more mobile games coming out. One of which is now rumored to be a World of Warcraft version of Pokemon Go.
Oh, really? I didn't hear
Yes,
that.
that is one of the new rumors. Is that they are working on a Warcraft Go, is what the fans are kind of calling it, of a Pokemon Go type game for like the battle pets, but on your cell phone.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yep, and I can assure you that it got met with rave reviews by the fans. Nobody lost their mind about it, and everybody was excited. There was the people. It's not what people are asking for. But then after all of that, which is that horse has been beaten to death for the most part by this point, I think by everybody in the gaming world, and that has pretty much chosen sides on either they're pro or anti Diablo Immortal before it even came out. Um, Oh, and there's also another funny thing I was talking about on Twitter about that is there's a supposed leaked list from China of games that are currently or potentially getting banned unless they are fixed, and all of Blizzard's titles are on there for not meeting their what's the word,
It's
sanctionings.
like don't they have
So
like a ministry culture or something
yeah,
there
they
where
have
they
a
like
Ministry of Culture there that has deemed Overwatch cast is too diverse because it doesn't promote the proper values in their casting.
right.
In Diablo, the chat is not censored, so they don't like that. And the women are not dressed properly in that one. And Warcraft is uncensored chat, and people aren't dressed properly, so they're potentially banning all the Blizzard games in China, which is the market they're saying Diablo Immortal was built for. So things are going well there with this plan of infiltrating China to make it work well for them. So then after BlizzCon, you had WoW 8.1 come out, which is the expansion that, or not expansion, the patch for the current expansion in Warcraft, which is basically giving that player base nothing. I stopped playing Warcraft right around the launch of BFA because it was just boring and there was nothing to do in the game, and I just wasn't interested in any of the stories they were telling. But apparently, this expansion isn't fixing anything. It's just giving them more of the same that everybody's been complaining about. But along with your patch giving you nothing but one new raid, they also put a brand new mount into their store so you can go pay $20 or $35 and get a new mount, which has outraged people that they put all this time and money into building this really beautiful mount, but they didn't build any beautiful game content to go with it.
Weird.
Yeah, so they went for the quick cash grab of, hey, don't you want this pretty new mount? Don't pay attention over here where we're patching your game but not actually patching anything. And then they put the cherry right on top this past week by gutting HOTS, Heroes of the Storm, and totally closing all of their esport divisions for that, both the professional and the collegiate level. And then also saying that they are moving their devs off of this to other projects, which we can only assume are mobile games since they said they were taking their top devs off of Heroes of the Storm and moving them on projects. And previously, Blizzard said they're putting all their top devs towards mobile games. And then they basically fired everybody, commentators, production, players of an esport via blog post, which is what really
Oh,
has the
wow.
community upset. Was
Huh.
nobody was giving heads up. At BlizzCon, they were saying 2019 season Crucible. The Crucible happened right after BlizzCon. What the Crucible is, it was a tournament basically for amateurs to have a chance to get the pro teams. You had a bunch of people that worked their butts off through this Crucible to get approved to be a pro player. I've seen stories on Twitch from some people that finished the Crucible. They dropped out of college. They quit jobs. Like this was going to be their 2019 career. Like they did all this stuff for the HGC, and now they got fired via blog post before it even started. So that is what really has the community outraged, is just how little Blizzard cares about the community. Um, and I know there's people saying that like, well, they say they're still supporting HOTS. Well, they're still technically supporting Diablo 3. And when was the last time Diablo 3 has really gotten any new content on PC?
Right. Well, and then there was also that rumor like that the second DLC was like if they had stuck to their guns and if Activision didn't cut them off,
Mhm.
that second DLC was supposed to come out like around now, right?
Yeah,
Like that would have probably been the big thing that they could have announced at this year's BlizzCon. Is
BlizzCon,
that what I
yeah.
heard?
Yep, there's supposed to be a new expansion to hold you over to Diablo 4, which they're saying is probably 2019, 2020 BlizzCon coming out. So that would have given you a year of wiggle room to do something with. And I mean, everything I'm hearing is this is Activision slowly cannibalizing Blizzard finally, where Activision has basically, from what has been I've read and heard on other podcasts and stuff from people that have connections inside of Blizzard, is that Activision's basically told Blizzard you have to cut costs and ship more games.
Right.
So spend more, make more games, but don't spend more money doing it.
Yeah, and the thing to clarify there too is that this is I think she was she was a CFO at Activision that
Yeah.
came into Blizzard and was the one that was making that statement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where some of the the rumors started to settle in that Activision's creeping in on Blizzard, no longer not trying to treat it as a separate entity, but something like you got to do this to
Yeah.
settle your bottom line is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, I mean, the fan base is pretty much taken to calling it BlizzVision now because it's been taken over by Activision pretty much. And the word coming out from like former devs and stuff that have left is that like Activision developers are being put in charge of the Blizzard teams and things like that. And they're basically assimilating it into the Activision culture finally of make really bad games, but make as many of them as possible so you can still turn a profit. I mean, when's the last time Activision had a good game?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Even Call of Duty
depends on your perspective, man. Because I mean, I hear many good things about Black Ops 4 for Call of Duty,
yeah,
especially with their new Black Ops Battle Royale mode. It even they put it on Battle.net as well to expand the audience, and I heard it's been very successful for them. So it depends on your perspective and what you like, but I mean, Activision and probably some other fans would say, yeah, I mean, we like our Call of Duties annualized, and this one's
yeah.
pretty good. So it depends on where you're coming from when you say that.
Well, I guess to me though, it's like when Blizzard isn't a Call of Duty kind of publisher, which I think is where the problem a lot of fans are having, and that's the direction it's kind of moving towards. Is that Blizzard's always been the Blizzard fan base was built under the theory of for gamers by gamers, basically, where like
Right.
games in Blizzard's history had gone through 5, 10-year dev cycles, and the fans have been fine with that, waiting for it because what you got was worth the wait. And even in like the world of StarCraft, StarCraft 1 was amazing, and StarCraft 2 took like a decade to come out. But in between, there was that rumors for like StarCraft Ghost. I'm sure you remember that one. That was supposed to be like a third person, first person shooter. You played a ghost, infiltration, all this cool stuff. It never came out because it didn't live up to the Blizzard quality standards, so they just nixed the development and shifted back to the StarCraft 2 and building that out. And I mean, so that was the company that built this fan base where if the game wasn't good enough, it didn't come out. And then now you're getting basically the same people that was who we grew up with, and that was the company we knew and that we supported. And I mean, if you go back through my credit card statements, I am sure I have paid thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars into Blizzard. Between Warcraft, between server transfer, buying games, buying expansions, paying for my friends' monthly subscriptions when they didn't have it because we'd all pay for each other if we were short cash those months. Having multiple accounts at one point, so I could have Horde and Alliance when you couldn't have them on the same server. I mean, I have spent some money at Blizzard. Like, it is depressing the amount of money I spent at Blizzard. Like, I probably could have paid college off by now with that money.
What you should have done was like take a picture of your credit card statement and show those things, and then have a side picture of what your kitchen cabinet looks like.
Yeah,
and then they'll get the real picture of how much you love these games.
Basically, like I mean, I am as Blizzard fanboy as you can get for the most part. Like the only thing I haven't done yet is make it to a BlizzCon because they never work out with my work schedules because they always drop them right in the middle of a big project going on. But I mean, my gaming catalog for the longest time was nothing but Blizzard for the most part. Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, Warcraft, Diablo 3, StarCraft 2, Hearthstone. I mean, those were the main games I played. and they all came out of Blizzard because that was the lore I loved, the stories I loved. And I mean, I've gotten to the devs were always very approachable. So I mean, like there was a real community there, and it feels like Activision kind of has come in and said that you have a nice community here, but you're only making hundreds of millions of dollars, and we want you making billions of dollars, so that has to go. So I mean, it's not like I mean, yes, Heroes of the Storm is the least successful Blizzard title at the moment by far, but at the same time, it was never reported to be losing money. It was always just the small baby story that was the fun one that didn't have the big overarching stories. It was just the MOBA they put out to try to compete with League and Dota 2. They realized they couldn't do that, and it just became a little cult game they had that they supported. And yeah, they had to put money into it, but there was never any talk of them losing money over it that I've ever heard. But it wasn't. But it seems like since it just not losing money isn't good enough for Activision, if you're not making Fortnite money, then there's a problem.
I mean, could they have done something where they could get past breaking even? I mean, what would be the potential?
I mean, I don't know if they. I mean, I don't know if they might have been making money. I don't know how much. I just know it wasn't. It was never reported to be losing money, is what I'm saying. Like it was never a fear of it's making no money, so this game's going to get shut down kind of thing. It was never at that point. I mean, it was never.
But that's my thing too. Like, if you're just breaking even and you're doing it for a very long time, I mean,
right? I mean, if it was just breaking even,
yeah, I mean, you're doing good, but I mean, can you do more? Can you do something? Because I mean, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, bottom line, business talk, getting more money, but be putting that all aside. I'm sure, even the creators of themselves, as being Blizzard, as they are, for the fans, as they have been for a long time. I would like to think they probably were trying to think more what they could possibly do to increase that fan base further, rather than going even for a while there. I'm just kind of curious. You obviously are bigger HOTS player than I am because you've been doing it on Twitch lately too. So I'm just curious if you have a perspective on that.
The interesting thing is the developers are still very much behind the game and wanting to make it better. Like some of the streamers that I've become friendly with and I hang out in their streams, the developers come into their Twitch streams and hang out with the fans and the community and talk to us and everything like that. Like I've gotten to meet a few of them just in the chats of my friends' chats. And the developers are very much like 100% into the community. Like the community director for HOTS this weekend was running public games where you could come and play with some of the community team to try to keep the community feeling like they weren't getting shafted. Like they are the devs and the community group. Like that's where I'm torn at right now. Is the people that built the game and the people that support the game as far as like the community directors go, they're awesome and they're great and they're 100% committed to the game and to the community and making the game the community wants. But I was watching a video from a guy named MF Pallytime, who's one of the biggest content creators for Heroes of the Storm. And he has like contacts inside Blizzard that he can talk to and stuff like that. Like he can pick up a phone, call them, email them, stuff like that. And he was saying in his video about all this that he reached out to them like a month ago and they were like, yeah, it's coming. It's just the details are just being worked out here for the 2019 season. And then when this news dropped, he was like, wait, so did they lie to me or what? And he reached back out and the devs and the community team and people like that, from what he's been finding out, they found out the same time we found out in a blog post that all this was happening. So that's why there's such a split, is that like the people that I want to support that actually have their fingers in the game are still committed to making the game I want to make. And they were as shocked as we were about all of this and as heartbroken as all we were. And like you want to keep supporting the product because you know that team's behind it. But then you have the problem that the company behind them, though, they've been kind of shady. Just this whole tail end of 2018 going into 2019 with what they've been promising and not delivering, kind of bait and switching with the Diablo Immortal thing, kind of screwing over the entire pro scene for Heroes of the Storm, kind of not building any content for Warcraft, but giving them a nice new store object that to make them a bunch of money, but not actually add to the game. it's like, do I really want to support a company that's doing that? Where at the same time, I really want to support the developers that work there because they're actually behind the game and wanting to make a better game, but they're not being allowed to because of the actions that people above them are taking.
It's the unfortunate side effect of a lot of game studios nowadays, where your devs are active and they want to
Mm,
respond to the community better and then help out and try to make the game as best as they can, and then it's either a mismanagement concept that comes in or a repivoting of a company from higher ups that take them
right.
away from it. I mean, I already think of like two recent examples, like Telltale.
Mm-hmm.
They thought they were going to go out there and finish the Walking Dead final season all on their own, and next thing you know, 250 plus people of theirs are now out of the jobs,
Yeah.
and with no health benefits. A week later, you then have like Visceral Studios, the guys who make Dead Space. They
Mm-hmm.
had a Star Wars game that they were going to make. They had Amy Hennig from Uncharted writing the game, and we thought we were going to get that cool
Yeah.
first-person single-player Star Wars game, and then EA pulls the rug from under them and closes the studio and
Yeah.
says they're going to repivot the game as the games of a service. Um, it's just it sucks. I
Yeah.
totally get it, and I always appreciate communities like that. I look at Warframe as a great example too, as they're the
Mm-hmm.
same idea, putting up daily dev streams on Twitch, interacting with their
Yeah.
community and their fans to improve. They have that wherewithal and don't have that pressure to commit to any higher ups because they know that the direction they're going is fine. But
Mm-hmm.
then you have these bigger third party publishers like Activision who are stepping in and saying, "Nah, you're just breaking even on this game. It's not enough. We're going
Yeah.
to table it and move on
We're
to
only
something else."
profiting $1 million, and we want you to be profiting $3 million for this game to be considered viable or something.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean that to me is where the real heartbreak is the people that are building the Blizzard games are still the Blizzard I know and love. But the people pulling the strings and making the final decision are all from Activision, who are kind of outsiders that are now controlling the community I know and love. And I mean, I understand where, I mean, even the streamer community that I've slowly been becoming a part of as I've been streaming this is very kind of split on what to do about Heroes of the Storm. Is you have some who are really positive that hey, they said they're going to support it, and we trust in these people that are the devs, and that they're going to do what they say they're going to do first, as they always have. And then you have the other side going, but it's not the devs, it's the higher ups that actually control this. No matter what they're saying is just PR crowd control, that they're speaking from their heart, sure, but it's just to kind of smooth us over to keep us playing. But how alive is the game going to be that the pro scene's dead? Because I mean, of the big MOBA games, you have League of Legends, Dota 2, Smite, and Heroes of the Storm. That's kind of your big four that kind of encompasses the entire market. You have smaller ones, but their player bases is nowhere near the size of those four. And of those four now, Heroes of the Storm is the only one that doesn't have a professional league anymore. And that is largely what drives those other three games, is the money they've invested in their pro league. Because like League of Legends, the money that you see advertising them on like YouTube now to bring in new players, a lot of that stemmed from the fact that their pro scene is so profitable for them. Valve puts a ton of money into Dota 2. Because I mean, really, Dota 2 is a game that is like, I would say 95% pro and 5% community of people that actually play it, because it's, I mean, I've played it. I'm probably not a good spokesperson because I hate it. But I mean, to play Dota 2, you're basically saying, for the next hour and a half of my life, I want to log in, play one character, and play one map. And then if I have more free time, I'll do that again after this one. Because it's just a very grindy MOBA that is very, very strategic, very slow paced in how you build up. And I mean, I don't mind watching it because it's a lot of fun to watch the strategies and the thoughts behind it, but it's very tedious to play. So you don't pull in many casual players that want to invest 2 hours in a match that is basically a draw for the first hour and a half, and then the first hour 45 minutes, and then all your actions in that last 10 minutes when there's a big push and skirmish and big fight about it. So they're pretty much almost 100% driven by their pro scene, I would say. And then Smite's pro scene, they do all the dream hacks. They have competitions, all the dream hacks for tournaments and stuff like that across the world. And that drives a big chunk of their player base. Like when you log into Smite, it's all about the tournaments and the things like that, along with their specials and stuff like that. And so you have these games that are very pro driven in that same market spot. And so that kind of questions is, if you're not building the pro scene in a genre that pretty much only exists because of the pro scene, what does that mean for you? Are you going to be able to pull in new viewers? Are you going to be able to bring more eyes onto it? And while some are saying, well, if they cut the pro scene, clearly it wasn't doing that, but did you really give it enough time to grow after only 1 year of doing it? Because, I mean, nothing's going to be a success that way in just a year.
Yeah, is Activision looking at this and saying, because I mean, you also have like the Overwatch League had just launched for its first year, is our inaugural year, and I watched a few of the matches. I saw some of the Twitch. I saw the finals having it over here in Brooklyn. I mean, it seems like it's a huge, wide success here. So now, obviously, Overwatch, much different vein of a game compared to Heroes of the Storm, in that it's a competitive multiplayer shooter. So I wonder if it's just Activision, to your points. I mean, are they just looking at those out of the gate successes that they think, oh, it's okay to keep that as an esport, and when then they look at a game like Heroes of the Storm, if it's not at 3 strikes you're outruled, and is that why they're taking it out? I mean, do you think has something to do with that?
I mean, it could partially. Because I mean, like, I know Heroes of the Dorm, to me, is the much bigger loss than HGC, because Heroes of the Dorm was very successful. I mean, it was on ESPN too.
I've heard that, yeah.
So I mean, if you're getting coverage on ESPN2 for your event, you're doing pretty good at that point, I'd say. But I know a lot of the dedicated player base that's there, that's like the core of the community, a lot of them came through that system. Like, that's how they got introduced to the game. That's how they got known in the game. That was the coming up that got them to be a fixture in that community. So that was what was building your big players, that they might not all have made it to the pros. Some of them became streamers, some of them became YouTubers, but a lot of them came up because of the Heroes of the Dorm, and that's how they got their start. That was kind of the launching pad for kind of the figureheads of the community, came through that system. That's a big loss, I think, in building those influencers to bring in the new people, is that's how a lot of those influencers got their start. And then to carry on to that Overwatch, though, is, if I remember correctly, they bought out like MLG or something like that to build Overwatch. Like, they bought out a big esports company, and they rebranded it and built it themselves into that. And from what I've been hearing through different people that have connections at Blizzard, is the esports team as a whole in Blizzard is all jumping ship and trying to get out of it, because a lot of them feel Overwatch League is next to go on this Activision cut cost spree that's running through the company, because it is very expensive to run that league. And
Sure.
It's a big to-do, but the esports team is trying to like laterally move onto other projects, like to get onto the Diablo projects, get on any project that's not esports related. But the problem is nobody's wanting to move on to esports from other teams, because everybody kind of sees the writing on the wall, and everybody's kind of seeing Blizzard esports as a death sentence now inside the company.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, I mean, as if they're thinking that we're hitting the saturation point when it comes to esports there. I don't know. So. I mean, I hear esports. I heard one story saying that esports in the next 10 years will be as popular, if not even more, than the NFL, which is a pretty mind-blowing thing to say, considering how young esports is and how much football has been around the country. So I don't know how much
I don't think you can have saturation so much as we haven't, as Blizzard. Part of the problem is Blizzard's never done esports well, which is just the sad truth of it. Because even when Blizzard had WoW going, they tried to do like the arena tournaments and stuff like that, and it was successful for a little bit, but it never blew up. And they have their Dungeon Invitationals, which are successful and competitive and fun to watch, but they've never hit the mainstream. The only one they've ever really had hit the mainstream is StarCraft 2, but that's largely thanks to Korea.
Right.
Less so than the US fan base, which eventually attached and latched onto it and stuff like that. But even that's not what it used to be, because basically that's only still alive because Blizzard gave control of that to third-party organizers now. and they're just kind of supervising it, which is what a lot of people wanted them to do with the Heroes of the Storm. Instead of closing it, just do what you do with StarCraft, outsource it to the community groups and let them kind of run it for you, and then you just kind of oversee it like you do with StarCraft.
Yeah.
But so they have a history of failing at esports to begin with, and a lot of people have been saying that the problem for Overwatch is it's successful, yes it's profitable, but a lot of people say it gets lumped into the same vein as the Fortnites and the Call of Duties and stuff like that, which makes so much money on esports. And so much money as a whole is, yes, it's making good money, but it's not making Fortnite money. And that's where a lot of people are fearing is Activision desperately wants a competitor for Fortnite. Like that's what Black Ops 4 is supposed to be. And as successful as Black Ops 4 is supposed to be, it's still nowhere near Fortnite. I mean, it's barely competing with PUBG at this point. Like that's kind of where it is that second tier level. And in the rumors I've been hearing and reading about and hearing like podcasts and videos is Activision's internals, they want their Fortnite.
Yeah,
And
the hot item.
Right. They want something. They want that Fortnite, and they're not getting it from Black Ops. They're not getting it from Overwatch. They're not getting it from any of the other games. And so that's where a lot of this is coming from, is just kind of the put out more games and eventually one of them's going to stick because Fortnite came out of nowhere. So if we just throw enough crap out there, one of them's eventually going to be our Fortnite.
Yeah, well, it's the old saying, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right?
Right.
So I always looked at it, I was like, even when Fortnite came out, I was like, you know what, Fortnite, PUBG, I'm good.
Yeah.
I think the saturation ended there for me as far as Battle Royale.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think Battle Royale.
As revered as Blackout is for Call of Duty, I mean it actually kind of surprising to hear that it's still not competing with PUBG well, considering it looks like a more polished version of PUBG, if you ask me.
I'm just going off like when I'm looking at Twitch numbers, they're usually pretty close most of the time, with Call of Duty a bit ahead of it. But I mean, there's been some nights when I've seen PUBG just dwarf it and stuff like that. I mean, it just depends who's on and playing, and that's really the only metric I was going by. I was just looking at kind of the amount of people watching a category on Twitch.
Okay.
Because that tends to be a pretty good indicator of what's trending as far as player bases go, because you're usually going to watch what you want to play over watching something you're not playing or have no interest in playing, because you tend to want to watch something that you can interact with and relate to. And usually Fortnite is by far the top, and then you have PUBG and Black Ops kind of fighting for that second place spot.
Very interesting. Okay.
So,
yeah, I mean, esports is tough to manage.
Yeah.
There's even at that point, there's only a few people that can do it well, and you got to worry about that saturation too, especially when a lot of your games are similar to others, like some of the MOBA examples you were given. So, I mean, I kind of didn't surprise. It kind of doesn't surprise me hearing in the way why they considered taking out the Heroes of the Dorm and the other one I'm forgetting for Heroes of the Storm. HGC, thank you. They just made a decision. Maybe both of them too. For all we know, both Blizzard and Activision made a joint decision to say, you know what, it's just not worth the efforts considering where we are financially speaking, and where we're repivoting that, which we'll come back to that a little bit later.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that. I mean, it doesn't feel like Blizzard was on board with this decision just based on how long it got dragged out. I mean, because you figure you had BlizzCon and everybody was being told there's a 2019 season. They were plugging it at the show and everything, that there was going to be a 2019 season. And up until even like last week, they were still telling the pro people, as far as like the people, not the higher ups, but the lower levels that manage the esports division within it, we're still telling the different teams and organizations, as far as we know, it's still coming. They're just working out some of the financials, some of the details up top. And as soon as they get everything squared away, we're going to make an announcement about the 2019 season, when the events are taking place, all that stuff. It's like nobody was expecting this, because everybody at Blizzard was telling everybody below, like it might be like the C-level of Blizzard knew, but as far as like the contact points that the esports teams and organizations had, they all were still as under the impression it was going to happen in some form or fashion. Like even if it was getting scaled back and they couldn't say, well, we're scaling it back, they were still under the impression there was going to be a 2019 season, even if there was going to say only be, say, 6 events instead of 12 events or something like that. They were still running under that impression there was going to be some kind of season for this. And it doesn't help that Heroes was plagued from launch by poor marketing and poor positioning by Blizzard. Because like at first when they first announced it, nobody knew what it was because they just teased the name, Heroes of the Storm. And so, well, is it a new franchise? Is it a new what? So it didn't get a lot of oomph outside of the Blizzard community because the name didn't outright tell you what it was. Like originally it was slated to be Blizzard All-Stars,
Right.
which gives you a much better idea of what this game is going to be than Heroes of the Storm does. Because
I mean, even I remember. I'm sorry to cut you off, but even I remember when I saw that first trailer and I started seeing characters like the Lich King from World of Warcraft and Ghost from StarCraft. They're just kind of duking it out there. I'm like thinking to myself, this seems pretty cool, but what are you trying to actually tell me?
Right, exactly. Like, what are you making here?
Yeah, my first mindset was like, oh, this is going to be like a big story-driven crossover, like a multiverse type of thing going on. I'm all in for that.
Yeah.
And then I find out it's basically becoming a MOBA, which, don't get me wrong, is still pretty cool and fun to play, especially watching you play recently. It was not the kind of game I thought I was seeing at first when I first saw that trailer.
Exactly. Yeah, because it did not give that feeling. It came out with a very universe combining type vibe to it, like you said. And like calling it Blizzard All-Stars, even if you don't think MOBA, you think something more along the lines of like Smash Brothers or something like that, where it's just all the heroes coming into one game kind of thing to do some kind of brawler or something. It gives a better thought to get it out there into the public's eyes. At least when we know Blizzard, we understand All-Stars and what that means based off of like Super Mario All-Stars and things like that, where it's mashup games. So it at least brings a connotation of, okay, this is one game that combines all their franchises in some kind of competition. So at least would have given you the right idea from the start. And then the other problem is it didn't follow the standard MOBA model coming out, which hurt it in competing with League of Legends and Dota because it tried to do some things differently and make it more casual, open to casual players. And be kind of because they kind of, when it first came out, it had a split personality of it kind of wanted to compete with League of Legends and Dota, but at the same time it wanted to be the open-ended, any of our fan base can pick this up and play it kind of one, where you cannot just walk into Dota and League of Legends and start playing and understand what's going on and be good at it. It's not going to happen because you have to understand strategies, you have to understand items, and there's hundreds and thousands of items in those games that you have to figure out and manage your money to buy, and you have to be able to build XP, and there's all kinds of different assets you have to understand and work through, and you don't have any of that in Heroes of the Storm. So it came across as kind of a dumbed down version of a MOBA to begin with. So they weren't bringing in those hardcore MOBA players at first because it looked like the Super Mario version of their game, where it was like, oh, this is for the kids kind of deal. Because it was kind of the diet version of a MOBA. So they had a whole lot of problems at launch. And then they had Heroes 2.0 that came out that fixed a lot of the launch problems, but then alienated a bunch of the people that really liked the first version of Heroes. Because it changed a bunch of stuff then to kind of move it more towards a competitive direction and kind of restructure it to make it so it could be a more competitive game. And then after that, it felt like this year at BlizzCon, it kind of finally hit its stride. Where like it was the only one that didn't have any big backlash coming out of BlizzCon. It was the one that had all the hype coming out of BlizzCon. Because everything that they presented was everything the community wanted. So it kind of felt like it finally hit its stride. Like we were getting lore, we were getting a story of like, we understood the Nexus was this central point that pulled from all universes and put them in this other plane of reality. And we were finally starting to get a story behind that. Like they had comic books coming out that told us about the Raven Lord and the garden terrors and the temples and all this stuff. And there was starting to be this story behind it about what the Nexus actually was. And you got Orphea, who was the first hero of the Nexus that was born inside this universe. So they were starting to actually universe build. And it looked like it was finally hitting its stride. And then they kind of came through and just chopped the legs out from under and went, nope, we teased you. So I mean, so that's where a lot of the pain points are too. Is it was kind of like coming out of BlizzCon, Heroes of the Storm kind of came out the clear winner as far as announcements go. Because I mean, BlizzCon was kind of set up to be all about Diablo, and that didn't go well. And I mean, Hearthstone announced a new expansion, but Hearthstone's Hearthstone. It's pay to win. Nobody really pays attention to it anymore because they've kind of destroyed that game where if you don't have tons of money to pay, you can't be competitive in it anymore. So nobody really cared about that at BlizzCon. Warcraft, nobody cared about because they weren't announcing anything new there. They're just kind of like, yay, you haven't left us. This is great. We promise we're going to make this better one day. And it never really did anything. StarCraft was the same way. StarCraft kind of just, there's not much left to do there because it's kind of just the competitive scene rolling along and it's doing its thing. So, I mean, right. Of all the stuff they announced, Heroes was really the only one that had any excitement coming out of it, which made this kind of feel all the more sudden because even Overwatch, it had the new heroes, but it wasn't, they weren't bringing anything else new. They just introduced new heroes. It wasn't like new game modes or new anything else coming out of it. It was just, they announced their new hero. It looks awesome. I haven't played her yet, but which is exciting, but it was like Heroes really had the momentum, it felt like, coming out of BlizzCon of all these positive things. And then suddenly finding out, we're scaling all of it back.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting trend if you think about it, and I kind of tailoring this back to the beginning conversation about this when we were talking about Diablo Immortal. Mm-hmm. There's a great Kotaku article that came out, Jason Schreier put out. If you folks on here, if you don't read that guy's stuff, read his stuff. It's really in depth. He's probably one of the few true video game journalists that can report the news and get the right sources on it. But
I think he's the one that broke the Activision story too, that they were the ones infiltrating.
Yeah, he was. That's where we kind of knew that the CFO from there was kind of
I think he's the one that had a lot of that intel that's kind of been broke a lot of this, that's now opening up a lot of the doors other people are finding, was his Activision Blizzard connection.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting to think about it there because, I mean, just it seems to be a more recent trend. Like you mentioned here, of the Storm coming out of the gate, not really flowing well and not really having the right identity. And even if you look at a game like Diablo 3, he says, Schreier says in this article, like, that's a game that took almost over 10 years to make, if you think about it. And even then, when it finally came out, we all know about that fiasco. There was that Era 37 fiasco where the server was not available. And it drove fans crazy and drove their engineers bonkers as to try to figure out what's going on top of the whole auction system that got a real big heated crisis too, that they eventually had to take out too. It just seems to be something that Blizzard is like, these, at least of these recent games, they cannot get these games flowing well out of the gate here. And while, like to my earlier point in that other story we were talking about, where Ubisoft can take a game like, For Honor, for example, and put the effort in and make it a much better game for it, Blizzard will do what they can. And yes, I do believe that they're for the fans, that they're in the community and they want to do well to them to make their games the best they can. But when you have a corporate overlord like Activision overseeing you there, they're coming in and saying, you know what, we see what you did. Diablo 3, had a better standout when it had the first DLC Reaper of Souls come out here. But they, if you read this article, Schreier said everyone at Activision still looks at Diablo 3 and says it's a failure. Yep. And it's one of the reasons why we didn't get the second DLC announced at BlizzCon with the potential coming out next year. It's why Diablo 4 is still way down the road. They said it's coming, but it was not something they were going to talk about at this year's BlizzCon. Yeah. And really, I mean, Diablo Immortal, because, I mean, the fever pitch was there for Diablo this year because we hadn't heard about it for a while. They had to throw a bone, and it was the unfortunate bone to use against an audience that's primarily based over the last 20 years. They decided to use a mobile game to end the keynote for it. It just turned out to be the worst move for them to do, and it's sad. It's sad in the way too here because clearly, I mean, I see Blizzard wanting to do good for their fans here, but if you also go by what this article is saying, a lot of these key developers that are being taken off these games, like Heroes of the Storm, and moving to these mobile games, actually do feel like they genuinely want to make these games. Like you made you said it was like the World of Warcraft game was going to be like a Pokemon Go type of game, right?
Yeah.
So the guy who helps make those games in Diablo is a huge Pokemon Go fan, so it just blows my
Yeah.
mind to think, well, of course it makes sense. He loves Pokemon Go. Of course he's going to make a World of Warcraft version of that game too. Um, it's the best way I could to say this is that while we want Blizzard to do right to us, and we have this history
Hmm.
of 20 plus years of them doing right to us through Warcraft, through Starcraft, through
Yeah.
Heroes of the Storm, through the old Diablo games, but they're probably thinking through this and saying, you know what? I mean, we've burned through so many years of development, and believe me, we already said that games are very hard and very expensive to make.
Yeah.
They probably are looking at this and saying, you know what? Mobile is probably quicker. Yeah, they're probably looking to Activision and saying, yeah, you know what? Mobile games are quicker to make. They're probably it's a wider audience. Everyone has a mobile phone, right? and
Yep. That great PR statement.
then they're thinking of the best PR statement you could do is your biggest convention of the year. So they're probably looking and saying, you know what? This is what we got to do if we want to sustain ourselves, given a lot of these recent blunders we've had. Even though the games would eventually get better over time, it just didn't justify to their minds the costs that they were putting into it.
The interesting thing, though, is it's a very calculated risk that they're taking with this, and the problem is going to be, though, is can they build up this new Blizzard fan base fast enough to make up for their shrinking core fan base that they've driven away? That's going to be the interesting thing to see. I mean, a part of me kind of wants to watch them burn. And kind of like, serves you right for screwing us over all these times. But it's going to be interesting from just a outside perspective, watching the dynamics of a company and from like the marketing aspect and things like that. Because I do every day. I do marketing every day. It's my job. I'm in web design and UX design, and my entire day is spent researching what our competitors do and how to do it better online. So I completely understand the mindset of looking out and going, well, our competitors are going mobile. They're going to the Switch. They're going to these kinds of games and trying to pivot to match that. But at the same time, you have to make those choices in an educated manner. Like we just launched a new website that's a huge deviation from the old website was. But we're not introducing all those new pieces of deviation up front because we have to hold the hands of our customer base and get them to that endpoint. And I don't feel like Blizzard's doing any hand holding. They kind of just took our hand and then cut our arm off and kept walking with it, assuming we would follow to get our arm back. And nobody's following.
They just drop this load on your lap and say, here you go, this is where we're going, bye.
Right. And I feel like that has been what might hurt them the most because, I mean, BFA was very well hyped and very well received coming out. I was watching a video from a guy called what's it, Babyface Heel, and he was talking about and looking at the YouTube videos that came out across the entirety of the expansion. So like the announced video was like almost 100% positive, very few downvotes on YouTube, and then the initial launch trailer still very positive of stuff like that. But then you start getting into the gameplay trailers that have been coming out since then in these different guides and videos they've been making. So then you get to the Sylvanas story that's widely hated. You start seeing the trend of those numbers start evening out. And then for this latest trailer, there's almost like double dislikes to likes on it currently. And so you're starting to see the fan base is starting to go, you're not giving us what we want, so we're going to stop paying for it. And if you read through the comments, it's just people going, is the beta version of this done yet? Because I'm ready to pay for the actual game when you guys decide to make it. And like people unsubbing, and they're starting to send out surveys that basically are asking people, why don't you like this game? Like it's gotten to the point where they're just outright saying, what don't you like about Battle for Azeroth? And sending out surveys about it to people that have left the game. I've seen a couple of them in my inbox. I've just ignored them so far. because I'm not going to go back because they've ruined that game so far. I just don't care anymore. And you're talking about I've played Warcraft since vanilla, like end of vanilla, but like I was there in the initial expansion. I had my hunter. I had to make arrows by hand in the game still. I still had to find a quiver. Like all that stuff that they removed. Like I've been there 15 years of my life or whatever it is now. I have played Warcraft at some stage of it. And this past expansion, I just went, I'm done. And I haven't looked. This is the first expansion. Like I've burnt out in other expansions where it's been, all right, I've just grinded too hard or my life got busy. So I dropped out for a bit, but I always came back. I have not, I jumped back in at the beginning of this expansion. I didn't even finish leveling. Like I got to like 119, one level away from being max cap. And I just went, I don't care. And just stopped. I have characters that aren't even max level yet for BFA. And I just like, this isn't Warcraft anymore. This is not the game that I devoted so much of my life to loving, to building. Like I'm a total Warcraft lore nerd. I was in RP guilds where we would hold these massive like Lord of the Rings style events on the servers. Like as nerdy as you can get about Warcraft, I was in there. Like we had like it was to the point like we would stage epic battles like to like recreate battles like the Arathi Basin, and we had like Lord of the Rings music playing through like the vent as we like charged down the hill at each other. Like it was like I was as in-depth Warcraft nerd as you can get. Like you would be hard pressed to like find more nerd than I was at times at my peak Warcraft love. And I have no desire to go back to the game because like it's physically painful to log into the game now and see what it's become. Like it's upsetting because I look at these characters I've invested years of my life in, like not even gameplay hours, it's at years now times played on some of the characters. And just seeing where it's gone, it's just like, I put that much time to get to this. And I think that's where their problem's going to be is once you turn off a fan that has gone, look, Blizzard, I've invested 15 years of my life in you, and this is what you're giving me now so that you can go to mobile games. Can you build that mobile audience fast enough to recover? And you have to think too, a lot of people my age are the ones with the kids that are going to play your mobile game. And if you've burnt me, Blizzard, am I really going to go, hey, let me show my nieces your new mobile game you made that you put out? How are you going to build that mobile base by angering this base that you have now?
Well, I mean, clearly, I think Blizzard is probably looking at this, and I mean, I hope it's not Blizzard and it's more Activision, because Blizzard seems to be more for the fans. But they're making no bones about the fact that they're going after the Asian markets.
Yeah,
because that's where the money now is. China is where the next big market is because they're opening the doors. I mean, you look at Hollywood. I mean, how many reports do you see at the box office now about how well this movie did in China? Mm-hmm. Like you never would hear that. It'd always be, hey, U.S. did great here, but now China is now the big name that you want to hear because China's opening its doors to all these entertainment mediums, whether it's movies, TV, or now video games. So they're the big pot of the pie right now that is changing the landscape of culture and entertainment. Mm-hmm. And Blizzard is making no bounds about it. You already mentioned, StarCraft has always been huge in Korea.
Yeah.
And China, especially Tencent is like one of their huge publishers there who keeps buying companies. Mm-hmm. I think they even have a big stake in Epic, who owns Fortnite.
Yeah.
So they clearly are all about, spreading that appeal, especially in the mobile market, which is the hugest. China's got the hugest mobile market right now.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense from a financial and business perspective why Blizzard and Activision are thinking this.
The Blizzard, I will openly say, let me preface this statement with, NA, EU are much more the Blizzard markets I'm familiar with because that's where all my friends are.
Right.
I dabble in the Asia markets just because of like the pro teams and stuff there that I followed during like the different BlizzCon stuff. But there's always there's a language barrier, so I don't understand half the stream anyway. But the reactions that I've seen of even just from like the Heroes of the Storm being canceled, like the pro scene, like the biggest teams in that HGC all came from China. And so the biggest players and your biggest advocates for Blizzard for some of this stuff, say coming from like this, are coming from China. Like there's a couple of videos I saw on Twitter of people from those pro teams, like they were online playing when the news broke, just crying in their stream about how they felt abandoned by Blizzard. And so I don't know how smart a move it was when your biggest sections of your current market are all your pro scene, because StarCraft is Asia. Even Heroes of the Storm, your biggest pro teams all came out of Asia, and you have I would assume, Overwatch is a few pretty big Asian teams too, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
That play pretty
Couple.
competitively. So I mean, your big influx of the Asian market is largely esports and pro gaming, and those are going to be your ambassadors for those titles over there. Is going to have to go, because you're going to have to go through, because that's how games really go now, is they're driven by the influencers. And if you're angering your influencers, you're in trouble. Because look at Fortnite. What really, when you say Fortnite, everybody knows Ninja.
Right.
And if Ninja gets upset at Fortnite, you quickly see those changes reverted. And if Pokemon gets angry at Fortnite, you see those things reverted. Because they control the army of 9-year-olds that power Epic.
Right.
And so Epic does a really good job of not angering their influencers. Like when they start, like if you see a video come out like YouTube or something like of Ninja or other pros complaining about something in Fortnite, you quickly see the Fortnite devs coming on, and in the next update, either that's been removed or it's been largely modified to make it less of a game changer. Like there was a big outcry about the parachute being able to be deployed at any level to glide away. And now there's a height requirement on it that so you can't escape as easily, because a lot of the bigger name, I know, streamers were all complaining about it was no fun to play Fortnite when anybody could just run and jump off a building and get away from you. It took a lot of the skill out of it because you didn't have to build to get away anymore. You just could jump off the ledge and fly away, and you get away. So they knew they couldn't remove that because the casual player loved it. So they just added a height requirement, so you still had to build to try to get away and get up to a certain level before you could actually deploy it. But that was their way of making sure they didn't anger those influencers, because you figure Ninja has 1 million followers. If Ninja stops playing Fortnite, that's 1 million people now hearing like that why he no longer likes your game. And I feel like Activision and Blizzard don't understand to the same extent that Epic does how important those pro gamers and those influencers are in the gaming industry now. Because so many people want to play the same games those people are playing, or want to play those games with those people. So if those people are the ones you're turning against, they're the voice, they're closer to the community than your devs are. Because you have your corporate overlords and you kind of have your devs, so no matter how engaged in the community they are, they're never going to be engaged as the influencer is and the content creator whose entire life is devoted to the community. So once you anger that level, I wonder how you can start to rebuild for a new market, because those are the people you need hyping up your mobile games, and you need hyping up your Switch games and your new console games and stuff like that. They're the ones you need to kind of have help baby step the community in, because they're the ones the community trusts more than you.
Yeah, I mean, there probably definitely needs to be a little bit of a level sets at Activision, because I think they're definitely the bigger third-party publisher out there, like an EA, and they're just looking more at the bottom line. And what are the active users that are going to keep coming back here? They may not be as fresh or prevalent in those influencer communities, because they are thinking traditional business model more than anything else.
I think that's the interesting thing too we're seeing is in this game as a service industry, you're not really seeing the big publishers making the biggest impacts. Because you figure Epic, they were not big until Fortnite. Fortnite was their keys to the kingdom, but none of their other games were really huge that had the attention of like EA or Activision or anything. So I mean, they had Paragon, which was going up, which is like an Overwatch clone, type in the same vein as Overwatch and stuff like that. But that was not. It was doing okay, but it wasn't taking off to like make them noticeable in like the mainstream media like Fortnite did. And then like even League of Legends from Riot, they're not a big studio either, or they didn't start out as a big studio, and they're not backed by a big studio. They're on their own still, just doing League of Legends and making bank with it. And I think that's what's baffling to like the EAs and the Activisions and stuff like that, is these companies don't have the money behind them, but they're exploding. And if you look back at like what's making them explode, it's the player base. and it's the community and it's the influencers and it's the people on Twitch and YouTube and Mixer that are hyping those games up and getting people involved in them. And it's very rarely the TV commercials and things like that that are doing that. Because like you don't go to GameStop for that stuff. Like when people go to GameStop, they're not going for their online multiplayer games. They're going there to pick up that single player game that they want to play by themselves when none of their friends are around. Right. That's the market they're going to GameStop for, and that's where they're picking up those Assassin's Creeds and stuff like that. Those aren't getting pushed as heavy. It's like even if you look at Twitch, the game for being in the game of the year, that game has very, very low viewership because it's not a fun game to stream. So you're not making a big impact by influencers because, yeah, when it first comes out, it'll get a huge spike because everybody's playing it because they're going to be streaming anyway, so they want to play that game, so they're going to stream it. But in the long run, that community doesn't stay the same as like Fortnite, where every single day you're going in and watching Ninja and hanging out in his chat and listening to what he has to say about Fortnite. And so I think that's where the big disconnect is these bigger companies, they look at Fortnite and they go, well, what's different between that and Call of Duty, which was largely a single-player mission campaign-based game when people think about it, with death matches and stuff like that. But it's not the same vein of community, like the community that built up that or built up Assassin's Creed or anything like that is not the same kind of community as these Fortnites and League of Legends. And I think that's what a lot of these big publishers just aren't understanding when they jump into those arenas, is that it doesn't work the same.
Well, and to be fair, too, I mean, Twitch has really only seen its big blow-ups when those games like Dota 2, and most definitely Fortnite for sure. Like,
yeah.
I mean, like, only really recently are companies like Epic really figuring out to leverage the influencers of Twitch and YouTube correctly.
Right.
So to be a little fair, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, these bigger publishers have to get their ducks in order here too. But I'm sure through all the red tape and through all the other stuff they're managing day to day, where unlike an Epic who can concentrate just on Fortnite, they may still have that lag time where they need to really do figure that out. I would like to think that they do believe that the influencer community is important for the marketing and the expansion of their game here. They just either are blind to it right now, or I don't know if I would go as far as say as they're unwilling, or they just don't have a path yet to figure out because of all these other commitments. I mean, that's just speculation I can only think of as to why they're not thinking about that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just pulled up the Twitch browse here and just taking a look here, and like the first like real single player game that pops up is Red Dead Redemption 2. And that's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 10 per row, so it's like 10, 20, 30. That's like 60 games down. I mean, yeah, so I mean, it's such a different market that like, it's weird because like everything else is a multiplayer experience kind of game where you can engage and with other people. And it's just interesting that you'd think publishers would kind of get the hint that that's what, if you're going to go multiplayer, you have to build it up through these influencer communities and stuff like that, because that's where your user base is.
Right.
Because I mean, like Fortnite right now has 171,000 viewers watching it at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, that's crazy. Because I mean, there's 200,000 people between Fortnite and League of Legends right now just watching it.
Gotta get their bedtime sleep, man. Watching people get sniped,
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, that to me is gonna be the interesting part. They was seeing if Blizzard can build up this new mobile gaming fan base fast enough to replace the fan base they're losing. Because like my suggested recommended channels list and my followed channels list, it used to be pretty much stacked Heroes of the Storm all the way down. And this past week, it has been stacked with a lot of people in League of Legends and Dota 2 and just in other random games, just looking for new games to stream and play and do things in. And their audiences, and they're still maintaining their audiences because their audiences are going with them. Like I know a bunch of people in chats have been saying that they've been reinstalling League of Legends to go play with the streamers and they've been reinstalling Smite or Dota 2 or looking or asking the streamer where they're going next so they can go get it set up so they can join them there.
Right.
And so
I think I think there'll be challenges. I mean, I think like any general company that makes a change in direction on
yeah,
the audience trying to serve to, there's always going to be that pain points because you're not going to get the same kind of numbers and sales that you would have gotten for a good number of years that Blizzard clearly had for the longest time with their PC fan base.
yeah,
So no doubt in my mind they're going to experience some pain points and have to cut some corners here, which is why you see a lot of the kind of cost happening, like with Heroes of the Storm, like with Diablo, and so on, because they probably do realize, yeah, we got to attack the mobile market, but it's going to take some time to get there. So in the meantime, you got to cut the cost on these other areas, because if we keep pushing money into something that is not going to, it's not going to give that kind of course correction revenue while we work on this mobile market, then what's the point?
Yeah. So I think we should finish this out, and I will give you the greatest Blizzard conspiracy theory I have heard come out of all of this. This is like the we haven't landed on the moon conspiracy level. There is a very small group in the minority of the Blizzard community that has their tinfoil hats buckled on as tight as they can go. And their theory is the devs are all saying they want to make crappy mobile games so they can devalue Blizzard's value to the point Activision no longer cares about it, and the original owners can come back in and buy Blizzard back and bring it back to its roots. And that this is all a planned conspiracy to ruin the company from within so that Blizzard can buy itself back from Activision at an affordable price, because it won't be worth anything once they go the mobile route.
Man, we got a lot of time on our hands, don't we?
Apparently, I can only imagine this group of people has like the yarn string in their basement going from this Blizzard CEO left this date, but now we haven't heard from him until now when the mobile Armageddon happened, so he must be part of it.
Is this the chalkboard in the basement where you spin it around and there's all the connections?
Yep, exactly. It's got to be, that's the level of crazy it is. Because I've seen it crop up in a couple of channels of people suggesting that this is the devs all got together and agreed to tank the company so they could escape Activision. And that this is a unified rebellion from within.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah.
I wouldn't put nickels and dimes on that to say for sure, but if you want to put that in there and put it on the chalkboard, be my guest.
No, but that is, that's like the hardest of hardcore Blizzard fanboys, like trying to justify still being Blizzard fanboys at this point, with their tinfoil hats on, that this is all one giant conspiracy to end Activision so that they could so that Blizzard can buy its company back and go back to making games the way they should be made.
Oh boy.
Yep, that's about what I said.
I don't know what I can say.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say this, and guys, just please remember, they're companies, they're businesses. I hate some of the direction these people may go to, but they are thinking about the money. I it's one weird mindset that I don't think a lot of fans realize too. Yeah, I love my games. I love the companies make these games here, but they are not thinking mostly about you. They're thinking about surviving and making the most money possible out of all this. I'm sorry to say it, but that's just the reality we're in.
And part of it too is just human nature is very adverse to change.
Yeah, of course.
And when you've been a company that's been all about PC gaming for 20 plus years, and now you're suddenly introducing other areas that are kind of the polar opposite of PC gaming, like I think they would have done better to like maybe say Diablo Immortal would be the first Diablo Switch exclusive title, and then kind of just port it mobile from there. I think that would have gone over better since they're kind of entering the console market. But even on like consoles, you've never had a Blizzard game that wasn't PC first get ported over. Like it's always been PC first, then it went to the PS4 and the Xbox, now it's on the Switch. And even with like StarCraft, it was PC first, then it went to the N64. They've always built it for PC first, and then you got ports that were watered down graphically, watered down however it needed to be to work on that platform, but it was still a port of a PC game. This is the first title, Diablo Immortal, that was not a PC first game that's going somewhere else and never going PC. Because even Hearthstone started out with a PC version of it before it went that launched the same time as the mobile version, so you didn't have to have a mobile version, you could play on your PC still. So this is the first project that Blizzard's ever launched that wasn't PC first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that in and of itself is worrisome when you have a fan base that is very much PC driven because PC master race.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. You're
Yep.
used to something for so long, and you don't want to see the change happen. But I mean, I got nothing for you,
Yeah.
fanboys. I mean, I mean, hey, I mean, it may turn out to be a good game, and you could change your opinion otherwise. But I mean, who knows what the future really holds?
Yeah. At this point, I don't even know. I mean, with the way their stock's dropping, I don't even know if Diablo Immortal is going to have enough money to be funded to happen. Because their stock has been halved this past week since the HOTS announcement.
Yeah, I
They're
mean, they're
down
gonna
to
have to
like,
do. I mean, they're gonna have to do something. I mean, Diablo
yeah.
4 is still in the works, so
I mean,
gotta get
there's been
it.
some leaked teaser images off of that now that were data mined or leaked out or probably given in hopes to calm people down some. But I mean, they haven't. They had. I mean, I think the only way at this point they have to deliver Diablo 4. It has to come with no error. It has to go flawlessly at launch, and it has to be everything the fans have wanted because they waited so long for it. For the Diablo community to get back on board with Blizzard, and I think Heroes of the Storm, they can weather the storm, for lack of a better pun, by giving us everything they announced at BlizzCon still. But that's everybody's biggest fear is they promised us the world at BlizzCon, and now we're going to get none of it because support got cut.
Right.
And I think that is, and it's the same with Warcraft, is they have to give them everything the community's been demanding they fix that they keep agreeing is broken but not fixing, and putting in, instead of putting a new storm out in there, actually fix their game. And I think that's their only path out if they want to have a BlizzCon 2019 that's the same scale as this last one was. Because at the rate they're going, I don't see them making it to BlizzCon 2019 and still being a functioning company if they keep pushing back against their community this hard at every turn.
Yeah, I mean, they'll have to definitely rescale expectations this time, especially now that everyone knows that there's a mobile version of every franchise potentially coming out.
Well, that's
I think
oh
that's the one thing they need to think about because they were definitely about announcing this at this year's BlizzCon.
yeah. And if that's all they have in production, it's going to be an entire BlizzCon is mobile. How many people are going to really want to go to that?
Exactly.
Is going to be the issue. Because I mean, if everything is, well, we have these 3 new Warcraft projects, but they're all mobile, and these are Heroes Storm projects, but they're mobile. It's going to be, I don't. So I mean, unless they do something to fix their PC audience, I don't know if they have the bandwidth to survive to another BlizzCon and really have anything to do at a BlizzCon. That's
Right.
going to make it profitable for them to have a BlizzCon because it just seems like every time they open their mouth, they're putting their foot in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then they'll be left like with nothing at that point, and then they'll have the Sony problem. Like,
Yeah,
I got nothing to show at this convention now, so we're not coming this year. Bye.
yeah. Which will then, but because that's the catch-22 for them is they're trying to not make it sound like they're killing their games while they're killing their games. Because I mean, maintenance mode was the death sentence for Diablo 3. So we all know it's the death sentence for Heroes of the Storm. But at least Diablo 3 had a single player to kind of let it limp along, which Heroes of the Storm doesn't have. So without constant support and updates, Heroes of the Storm is going to get stale real quick. Because it's not a game that you cannot, that you can't keep the same thing for 3 years with no changes and it still be enjoyable to somebody. Or at
No,
least
definitely not.
on Diablo, it has the scaling hell mode, so at least every time you beat it, it gets harder for you. So you at least have that to keep pushing people into it. Where you need where with Heroes of the Storm, you need 10 people that are constantly engaged for it to work. Because you can't do it by yourself, because playing against bots is boring in those games. So that's where the problem is we all know it's a death sentence. It's just, what do they mean by a new development schedule? What does that actually mean? Does that mean we only get a new hero every year? Does that mean we're not getting any more new maps? Does that mean we're only going to get a patch every 4 years. Like, what does this later dev cycle actually mean for the game?
Yeah, I mean they're clearly in firefight mode right now. Let's put it out there. And as
Yeah.
someone who works in software development himself and used to be a product manager, I'm sure they're looking at all the fallout from BlizzCon and with all these announcements and especially the esports stuff. Like
Mhm.
they got to figure out the right messaging now going forward. And I think that it's the Destiny issue too. Like Destiny
Yeah.
2 had its launch problems as well. And so even though a lot of the roadmap stuff they eventually showed for what the content's going to look like each quarter probably was not up to par of what Destiny fans were looking for, I at least applaud them for going down that pretty transparent route. You
Yeah.
don't see a lot of software companies really show their cards that well or that much because they don't want to give away and show off the competition. So Blizzard may have to do that this time
Yeah.
because of the lashes they're getting right now.
Yeah. 'Cause I mean, that to me, that's their only path out at this point, is either basically to say Activision made us do it, stick with us, we love you guys still, which they can't do, or go in and basically say, look, here's what we can promise you, and then they have to stick to those promises. But the problem has been is they have written a check that they can't quite cash, I think. Especially with everything they promised for Heroes of the Storm at BlizzCon with a lessened dev team. I don't think they can do it in a timely manner. Like, I'm sure they can do it, but I don't think they can do it in the timely manner they presented us to. Like, we were like, because a lot of it was a ton of changes to ranked and stuff like that, and getting all that mathematics and logics worked out is going to be a nightmare. And then there's a lot of just quality of life stuff that they offered up. So I see that it's kind of that catch-22 for them, is you cut this, but you still need to deliver on everything you promised if you want to actually save face and not alienate a huge chunk of people.
Yep. And there lies, ladies and gentlemen, the lovely challenges of software development every single day.
And the gaming community is far from forgiving.
Definitely not. Gaming conspiracy and all.
Yep. Invest in tinfoil, because there's a lot of Blizzard fanboys making tinfoil hats at the moment.
Yeah. Save that tinfoil for food. I get hungry sometimes.
But yeah, so I think that about wraps us up for the first episode of Game-A-Holics.
It was a good one.
It was. Lots of controversy, suspense, drama. What more could you ask for in a show?
Let's just make sure the influencers help us out.
Exactly. We love you, influencers. Share our videos. But yeah, so I think the goal is for us to do this monthly and kind of just have a talk about the gaming industry, what's happening, our thoughts on it, our opinions, and feel free to agree or disagree. That's what the comment section below is for. And we will see you all in a month.
Enjoy your loot boxes, folks.